Hello and welcome to the fourth episode in the Property Forum chat show. We've got a treat in store for you today. We've got Jim Haliburton on the show, a massive HMO landlord in the UK, and it's going to be an HMO special today. So we're going to be talking about HMOs in general. We're going to be talking about the effect the market's had on HMOs and the models and what people are doing in their HMOs to survive and adapt and deal with not only the general market conditions, but COVID obviously is big issues this year. So we're looking at all the effects of that, and we'll be going to questions throughout the discussion. I'll be posing some of your questions that you've emailed in as part of the registration process. So thank you for those. I'll be posting those to Jim and answering those with you as we go through. And then there'll be a dedicated question and answer session at the end. What I'd love you to do as we go through, please post your questions. Obviously, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel as you go so you can keep up to date with future releases. But post your questions in the chat, which if you're looking at YouTube on a desktop will be to the right-hand side. Or you can post it in the comments on YouTube. We'll keep an eye out for those. And as we go through, I'll put your names up and your comments online, and we'll try and answer those questions as best we can whilst we're live. This is a fully live show, so bear with us. It might be a bit long. We might need to go for the odd toilet break or have a cup of tea whilst we're doing it. It's going to be fairly informal, and we just want to try and give you as much knowledge and experience and education as we can today on what we're kind of doing and how we're kind of surviving the current pandemic situation. So just like to quickly introduce myself formally. My name is Nicholas Wallwork. I'm the CEO of Property Forum, which is the largest international property forum in the world. I'm a published author globally. I wrote Brexit for Dummies, For My Sins, and I've also written Investing in International Real Estate for Dummies, which isn't just international real estate. It covers HMOs. There's a whole HMO chapter, a lot of detail there. So go and pick up that book on Amazon or wherever books are sold, or you can check me out at nicholaswallwork.com and redbrickwealth.com, which is our development and investment agency side. But now I'm extremely pleased to invite Jim onto the show. Hi, Jim. Welcome.
Hi, pleased to be here. Lovely.
Very
Thank you for inviting me.
Along. Really looking forward to this chat. I'm hoping to learn something from you as well. And I think knowledge sharing is always an extremely exciting thing. So lots of good content to come. And Jim, for anyone that doesn't know Jim runs HMO Daddy. He's one of the biggest HMO experts in the country. Check him out at hmodaddy.com. And we'll move straight on to the rest of the show and start chatting really. So ideally today we're really talking about COVID-19 and what are the sort of main issues that HMO landlords have been facing. We've had an unprecedented number of questions in for this podcast. I believe we've got well over 100 people registered. I'm sure we'll get hundreds of views after this, and hopefully we'll be able to help people with some of the things we talk about. But Jim, just over to you straight away really. And I just want to hear about your experiences in the current market. Obviously you've got huge background in HMOs. I want to pick your brains on all sorts of things HMO. I don't want to focus on COVID, 100% of the time, but, in the current market, tell us what your sort of experience is. Is it good, bad, ugly, mediocre? How are you kind of coping at the minute?
I think the main thing I've noticed, I can get around and park where I want because the traffic's so light.
That's a good benefit.
Apart from that, very little has changed from my point of view. Tenants have got to stay where they are. There's a bit of fear floating around. For the first time, we're getting a little bit of friction between tenants. We hardly ever get any issues where tenants fall out with each other, but we've had about 2 or 3 instances. But I've got over 100 HMOs. So, but one of the things a lot of people think is, how do tenants get on with each other? I don't have very much of that issue. They keep themselves to themselves, but there has been friction recently. It's actually been pretty good for me because the government's been giving us these bounce back loans, which I have taken full advantage of. Some of the lenders have been quite generous and give me payment holidays, which I don't mind. If a 20-year mortgage becomes 20 years and 6 months, it makes no difference to me. So I've taken advantage of that. So it's helped cash flow, which is desperately needed after Osborne's attack upon us. Yes, I'm very, very sorry for those who have suffered COVID. I don't know if you want to get into the issues of COVID or not, but I have a few views on that. But it hasn't really done much. And I get the feedback from the wolves out there that they expect there's going to be a lot of deals coming this way with COVID. And lenders, because I'm still acquiring properties, have been downvaluing by 30%. some of them, because of COVID, without any rational reasons. But between you and me, I don't think values have much of a clue anyway. They seem to be all over the place, and it's a very difficult thing to predict the future. So, no, I mean, it's one of the big advantages has been people have stopped suing me because they can't. But then the other side of it all is I can't evict the tenants who want to go. So we've got three or four tenants who are making life misery for all my other HMO tenants. And whatever you say, these people are in illegality. The police, once they've arrested you half a dozen times, give up on you. It certainly seems to be they pick on what I call the criminal virgins and are keen to deal with them. The serial criminals just get away with it, and they're just causing havoc. So no, it's not been much. It just reminds me of the recession. It's just so quiet.
Yeah, it is very quiet, isn't it? And have you seen any, when you're reletting your rooms, have you seen any decrease in the demand coming in at all? Or have you not had, I mean, you must have general churn with such a big portfolio.
Oh, yeah. We lose about 20 tenants a week, and we gain about 20 tenants a week. I'd like to gain a lot more. I'd like a queue out of the door, but it doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, it's the nature of the business. You've always got voids. Yeah, it's a little bit up and down, probably verging on quiet rather than busy. But that was more, I think, that was already coming with Brexit. That's put a lot of Eastern Europeans off. Not that we have that many Eastern Europeans. I'll have to do a summary. I always thought I had a lot of them. When I did the last check, there's only 6% were Eastern Europeans, so 94% are British. I should guess that it's somewhere in the region of 10. But that little variation makes a lot of reflects a lot on the coming and going. And I'm probably better off having the British tenants because they tend to stay much longer than the Europeans. They tend to come and stay for a few months, lose the job or go back home or move on up and get themselves a house or flat.
Yeah, what we've seen as well with some of the less English speaking foreign tenants is that they've struggled with the incentives from the government, so the furloughing and things like that, or any of the benefits that they do, that they are allowed to claim, they've not been claiming. And it's been a bit frustrating with a couple of tenants we've had that actually they would be able to survive and pay their rent comfortably, but they've not been able to go through that process. We've tried to assist, we sent them links, but when you've got such a language barrier for a couple of people, that can be a bit of a struggle.
Going back to that, sorry, yes, you brought up a memory. What really does annoy me is we find a tenant who's been paying regularly for years suddenly stops paying. So we go and have a chat with them and they go, oh, it's COVID. I say, oh, sorry, you've been laid off? Are you not working?
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, yes, we are working. Or we've been put on furlough. Oh, well, are they paying you? Oh, yeah, they're paying us 100%. So why aren't you paying the rent?
Yeah.
Well, because the government told us we've got a 3 months rent holiday. Where that's come from, I don't know.
To start with.
Yeah, so we've had to disillusion them. But you got the odd one or two who are going to go, no, 3 months holiday, I ain't paying, and we can't evict them. But that's the joy of being an HMO landlord. Yeah, no,
it can be tricky. And I think very early on, the government wasn't very helpful, was it? Saying these sort of non-eviction situations and rent holidays for landlords, they didn't make it clear that tenants do still need to pay the rent and they'll be still liable for the rent. I guess in your market, can you describe the difference between your market? I deal in young professionals exclusively. There's obviously the student market with HMOs. There's more the housing benefit market. Now, I know you're more in that end of the spectrum. Can you explain, exactly what your model is so the viewers can sort of understand the difference between my experiences, and thus when they're listening, they can kind of get an idea of how that might better help them in their portfolio.
Right. Everyone gets the impression I'm an HMO, a landlord who houses loads of unemployed, which doesn't help because when they come up and see my properties, I run sort of monthly courses where they can come up, have a tour of the properties. The ones where they see the tenants are where they're unemployed, and that fixes in their mind, not realizing that I've got less than 20% of my tenants are unemployed. Okay. So 20% are unemployed. 80% are working, mainly blue-collar workers. I'm not quite sure what you mean by professionals. I get quite a few professionals, the oldest professional in the world. We usually get rid of them when we discover what they're up to. But the overall, in this area, a professional will go get themselves a nice flat by the riverside or something like that. When I talk about professional, I talk about a doctor, accountant, solicitor, someone like that, rather than the term which is usually loosely used, saying, "Oh yes, I house professionals." And when I asked them what they did, they said, "Well, I have the odd airline pilot, air hostesses, but mainly baggage handlers." Well, I don't think really baggage handler is a profession. But there's nothing wrong with being a baggage handler, and I'm not trying to decry it. But mine are working, 80% of working, 20% unemployed, but I would classify them more as blue collar workers.
Yeah, okay, no, that makes sense. I would say, a lot of our portfolios in the Thames Valley, southeast of England, so we're, it's quite an affluent area generally. So yeah, we're definitely targeting sort of, solicitors, IT professionals. We get a lot of IT professionals in Reading and Newbury and that kind of area. It's kind of Silicon Valley out of west of London, the Thames Valley. So that's kind of what we target. Like you say, the more sort of blue collar workers, they can come into it, but you find that they're stretching to afford the rent, and then they're living off a couple £100, over and above their rent, and it doesn't work. And then something like COVID comes in and they're struggling. So yeah, I guess it depends what area of the country you're in and what works, what the big demand is. And that's key, isn't it? Is finding your sort of gold mine area. You've got your gold mine area in the Midlands. And where specifically is it? I mean, you're around Birmingham a lot, aren't you, as well, Jim?
So that's the misunderstanding. I'm in the middle of nowhere, the depths of Wednesbury, which is famous for three things. Jeremy Clarkson saying it's the most boring place on earth he's been.
Oh, did
we
he
had
say
the first
that? Okay.
IKEA
He's a
store.
comedian now, isn't he?
He is, Jeremy. And thirdly, I'm there. It is a non-place. It's north of Birmingham. It's south of Wolverhampton. It's west of Walsall and east of Dudley. And I'm centred in what most people would just consider little industrial towns. It hasn't got anything. I wish I had been in Birmingham. Birmingham's doubled in value, or where you are, because the price is going up so much, and you've got a much more robust, or did have, because I've heard different stories about London, where people saying they can't even get tenants in their HMOs. So everywhere has its issues and problems. I'm just a big fish in a small pond, where I am. I go as far as, I've got a few properties in Stoke, one in Coventry, but mostly Dudley, Walsall, Wednesbury, Darlaston, Wolverhampton, and a couple of West Bromwich.
I think you've touched on something that's really important there. And when I'm, like you, we do various property education with Property Forum. There's a lot of free forums, a lot of free ebooks. But then we do help people that have maybe done some courses. We do help with mentoring, things like that. And I love to mentor people. And part of the kind of thing I try and get people to think about when they're deciding on where to invest and what to do is actually get them into their area, get them, is there anything in their area? If they're in their London, they might struggle getting into property in London, but if they're not in London, where within an hour's drive can they invest and find their gold mine area? Because it doesn't have to be big towns and cities to make really good money. Quite the opposite, actually. I find the bigger yields are not in the city centres. And Reading, we've had a bulk of our portfolio there for many years, and we've definitely spread out. And we're doing stuff in Newbury, Andover, Basingstoke, Maidenhead, Slough. All these kind of areas now are coming really up the list because they're just not as expensive to buy. So the yields are far, far better, but there's still massive demand from professional tenants in these kind of areas. So it's a good strategy to go on the fringes of areas and keep it in one place. So you can get economies of scale, can't you? I can see you're sat in your office now. I assume that's where all your staff are based, and you've got an efficient system in place there, have you? What does your team sort of look like that runs your portfolio?
Very different to pre-COVID. I've gone through a big cull of my staff just before Christmas. And had a shakeout. And then COVID, those who wanted to self-isolate, a lot of them are not going to be coming back because we managed without them. And I think that's going to be a problem with a lot of organisations. You take on staff because you're told that you need you need extra staff, and then you survive without them. At one time, I had 40 staff. I'm probably down now to about 30 staff as we have. But going back to your interesting point about, and I get asked the question, where can I do an HMO? Where is it? Here's something that's quite contentious. I'm not suggesting you do it as a strategy, but I've never found anywhere where an HMO does not let. Now, I haven't deliberately gone out to buy a property in some weird place, but I've made some pretty daft decisions in my time, and I've ended up with property. And people say, "What are you going to do with that?" And I said, "Well, I was going to live in it because it seemed a nice place to live, but my partner doesn't want to. She doesn't like it. Reckons it's haunted. So what are you going to do with it now?" "Well, I bought it. I'll turn it into an HMO." "Well, who's going to live here?" I think, yeah, you're right. It's miles away from a bus stop, no shops, no train, nothing, industrial area. And guess what? It lets. Now, I wouldn't do that as a strategy, but I'm beginning to wonder, all these, I'm a bit cynical about these people who stand on stage and are so certain about where you can do property and what will let and what won't let. I've come to no great conclusion. There is no science in this business. Just do it. It seems to be the answer. But I certainly wouldn't risk my money.
That's a good bit of advice in itself, isn't it? Just get on with it and do it. I think so many people procrastinate, and they go on these courses and they spend tens of thousands of pounds. And obviously, you're aware as well as we are that providing good, authentic education is important. And I know you and I do that because we have extensive track record. And that's indisputable. And we're happy to show people around our deals, show them the addresses. Be very upfront about what we've done, and the education really comes second out of a passion of having done it for so many years. But there's a lot of bad educators out there, and unfortunately people that go on their courses and spend 15, 20 grand over the course of a couple of years, they come off and they don't know what they're doing. They'd have been better off putting 20 grand in trying to buy an HMO and learning the hard way. What do you think? What's your opinion of...
That's an interesting debate.
Yeah, and what's your opinion of property education at the moment? I mean, it's quite topical, isn't it? It's in the news. There's a lot of these dodgy tactics of people running to the back of the room to get a special deal on the day. What's your opinion of that kind of industry at the moment?
Again, I'm not trying to be controversial, but
no, please be controversial.
I shan't mention his name, who you're talking about, but I can't blame the bloke. Yes, he doesn't have probably much practical experience, but he gets the enthusiasm. You spend a day with me, you go home cutting your throat. I'm such a depressive because I'm.
Are you?
I'm like you. Well, I'm dealing with hands-on problems, and I get sort of a bit warped by it all and a bit cheesed off, and I give the reality rather to barefaced, and I say it's not all sunshine and light. You want someone who goes, yeah, it's great. Run to the end of the room, sign up, get some enthusiasm, because you need that. You need that passion to do it. I've got it, but you'd have to dig very deeply to get there. But I believe in it, and I will do it. But I can't convey it. And someone who does these sort of happy clappy, I think you've got to do it. I go on these courses. I attend virtually every course I can. I do about half a dozen courses as such.
Thank you for coming to our Property Summits event, by the way.
I do. Thank you very much.
Before we got in lockdown.
Sorry, when's the next one?
The next one is in January. Got the date somewhere. I'll have to look it up. But we'll post it in the comments on here. We're doing a couple of virtual ones like this. So we've got, I think, 2 virtual ones for the end of the year. We're also hoping to do, I think it's the Property Investor Show in September. We're hoping to get a slot there for an hour or two to do a sort of mini summits. But then the first in-person one's going to be back in January. So, we'd love to see you there again. Thank you. Yeah,
I'd love to come. I mean, do that. It's great. Even I've been around the business for 29 years. I love to come on these events, mainly because I get it's a good chat about the business, but also you can pick up bits and pieces. You meet other people, you get experience. So you never stop learning about the business. So I will do that. But probably the best happy clappy riser is Tony Robbins. And he is very much into motivation. And that's what you need. This is business, grinds you down, because day out, day in, you get the shit. You're nothing more than a doormat. I don't know how you keep so young and cheerful about it all.
Well, that's very kind, Jim. I use very good facial moisturiser every morning.
You have to give me the name of it. I could do a gallon of that stuff. It does. It's a business. It's hard work. You got to do it, but the terms you got to stick with it. And you've got to have faith. As such. So I'm not that holier and thou about the property, people in the business, if they inspire people to get off their bums, even if it's to sign on to another course, yes. And you're absolutely right. You don't need courses. You can get all the information you want by reading your book and my books. They cost what, 20 quid, 10 quid? If you ask me nice, I'll give you one free. The information's there, but it's the motivation that most people lack, the help that you get by attending such events. So there is two sides to the picture.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, maybe this is going to be the controversial conversation that gets people talking, but I'm kind of 50-50. So where I am, I think there's some tactics that go on that are too far. It is preying on the vulnerable. It is using very well-known kind of sales tactics to hoodwink people into signing on the day because they think they'll lose the deal. And there's some tactics that I don't agree with. On the flip side, I agree with some of what you're saying, because you need people to inspire, you need people to motivate you. If you then go off and don't act on that, I'm sorry, but you've only got yourself to blame. If the tactics of the sales people selling it are reasonable and they're not over the top and they're not doing trick offers on the day and it's just good, honest education, I've got no problem with it. And that's what we try and do at Property Summits. It's what I try and do with my mentoring, and I know it's what you try and do. So I think, good education is absolutely fine as long as there aren't too dodgy tactics. Getting people motivated, that's brilliant. I have no issue with that at all. It's just the kind of one-off offers at the end of the day and that kind of stuff that you've got to be very careful of who you're selling that to. But it's a fine balance. It's like anything in life. You can't please everyone. And there's never been any good press about any of these bigger educators that, the good things that they do, motivating, and the people they have helped. Of course, they're going to help loads of people as well. But, it's a balance. And I think, for example, certain people that have been particularly high in the press at the moment, we won't mention them for fear of us both getting sued, Jim, they've made false claims, and lied about certain people they've had interactions with. And that kind of stuff isn't acceptable. So, we do need a bit of regulation to make sure that sort of stuff doesn't happen. But then I'm all for people, say, getting up there, motivating people and putting on a good show. That's fine as long as it's done in a controlled manner. But anyway, moving on, because we're not here to talk about property education. We're here to talk about HMOs and how COVID's been affected. So I want to go to a couple of questions that have come in on the email. Thank you for everyone that's emailed. Can I employ everyone watching, please jump on the comments section. Even if you've asked a question when you logged in, jump in the comments and the chat. There's a chat box on YouTube here. You might have to log in and create a user if you haven't already. But yeah, like and subscribe to the channel, but log in and chat now. We're live. We always prioritize the live comments. I can see Tim Huxtable was there. He was just questioning, are we starting? We started a minute or two late, trying to get the tech working. But I'll answer a couple now. We're emailed in, and then we want live comments. So live comments, guys, come on, post them in the chat here, so we can pick Jim and I's brains. You only get one chance of this. Well, you don't get one chance. We're on the phone, but Ron Ramsey says, I'll get you to answer this one, Jim. Are there any official new regulations that HMO landlords should be following moving forward? As in, government regulations. Has anything been brought in yet? I'm not aware of any, but do you see anything coming? What's your kind of take on potential impacts of how we run these things?
More has happened in the last 2 or 3 years than's happened in the 29 years I've been in this business. We've just been hit by a tsunami of legislation in so many different ways, and the implications of them are yet to still roll through. The one I have particular concern about is civil penalties for the HMO landlords. I'm sure a lot of local authorities are going to look upon this as an opportunity to raise money, and they have. There's a lot in people in local authorities who hate us as landlords with a passion, and they would happily have us hung, drawn and quarters and our heads displayed on the entrance to the city, and they're out to get you. And you can hear of cases where they've just gone in and fined landlords, and they are very clever about it. You get one of these civil penalties, they put it over and say, well, it's no record and all the rest of it. How do you fight it if you don't know what the rules are? You're talking about sharp practice. Some of these councils make some of these trainers look like mere amateurs when it comes to manipulating the truth. And they'll wheel you in and get you to confess to something and then whack you over the 10 grand fine. By that time, it's too late. you've already admitted to it. What you should do is be aware of what's going on, and then get either learn how to defend yourself, which is probably the best thing to do, or get proper professional advice. The trouble is, the advice will cost you often more than the fine. So you've got this situation where, like I get with parking fines, I hate parking fines. So a 30 quid parking fine, that's all it costs me. When I come down to your area, it's 90 quid to have a parking fine. Yeah, I still argue over them. And I've spent the best part of a week getting out of a 30 quid parking fine. Is that a cost-effective use of my time?
Probably not.
No, it's not. It's the principle of it all. And that's the problem you got. These people, you got a situation a bit like Tesco's policing Asda, Waitrose, IKEA, and all the other stores. They, the council, who are our biggest competitors, are now policing us and can make the rules up and use their discretion as to what rules they have. So I've got a situation where on one side of the road, the rooms have to be 6.51 square meters. Across the road, they've decided they're going to be 10 square meters. Really? And it's all over the place. And then if you break some of these rules, and they'll call you a rogue landlord. I had it where they said to me, you hadn't displayed the latest license conditions on the notice board. We think 2 people are sleeping in a room for only 1. We've been changing the bed, so the old bed had to be taken out. And that's the kind of things they are threatened to fine you for. So that's going to be a real issue, is civil penalties. What they're going to bring forward now, I think it's very unlikely we're going to get any new legislation, but the legislation that's now in place will start to be enforced, and that's going to cause. Now, here's the strange thing about it all: big advantages for both of us, because if we can be smart and stick in the game, these people will walk out and they'll just hand the properties to you. I've had enough. Please, will you take my property off me, Nick?
I think Section 24 has put a lot of landlords out of the market as well, hasn't it? So it's compounding the effect of Section 24, which is where you can't, for those that don't know it, I'm sure most people watching this will, but you can't claim all your mortgage interest relief off your rent. So, something like that is going to compound that issue, isn't it? Pushing the smaller landlords out. I think maybe that's part of the government's plan, is pushing it into the hands of people that really want to take a landlord business serious, treating it as a business. As we said on the Property Summits event, treating your property as a business. You can't have 1 or 2 properties and treat it as a business. If you want to go past that, you've got to, invest in a team, a power team, maybe some staff. You've got to put your full time in it. You can't have it as a sideline job anymore as you get past a certain number. So could be kind of similar to that. Just putting it back again, Jim, if I may, in terms of the sort of regulations there, how do we, we've got Robin Charlton has asked how do we ensure shared facilities like bathrooms and kitchens and communal areas are kept clean to ensure the landlord cannot be held liable for putting tenants at risk? What are your thoughts there?
You can't. That's an impossibility. I've gone in and cleaned the property. When I used to have students, you'd have the parents coming down on the Saturday morning. So I spend all day Friday into the night cleaning the place, only to come back on the Saturday morning to meet the first wave of student parents, and the place was wrecked because the tenants who were in the house had a party the previous night, and they go, well, we'll clean it up sometime, never. You can't. I mean, it's an impossible requirement. So you don't. We send cleaners in once a week with a shovel and a yard brush, really, literally, to clear it out and get it right. You've got some houses where the tenants will cooperate, very few, but we've gone away from that model. We've still got shared properties. I've got all kinds of properties, but most of them are en suite now. So, and that's what I find the tenants want. Not all. Everything seems to let. I'm pretty sure if I was allowed to, and I could rent a box in the corner or somewhere, cardboard box, someone would want it. If I said, yeah, cardboard box available at 10 quid a week, I'd get a tenant for this. There is a demand at all kinds of levels. You can't do that, by the way, just in case you say that Jim is encouraging you to do that. But
yeah, we're not encouraging buying cardboard boxes to live in, people.
Yes, please make that plane, because you have to be careful when you say things like that. You get taken out of context.
Yeah, quite.
Everything does. This business, you've just got to accept that you are at risk. I feel I'm walking around with unexploded bombs in my back garden all the time, walking around landmines. If I put a foot wrong, and I don't know where the foot's going to go wrong, because you walked that trap before, you could be caught out. It is a risk business. But compared to me, say, join the army and go off to Afghanistan, it's a breeze. It's a walk.
Definitely.
In the park.
Thank you for the comments. We're getting a load of comments now coming in. Thank you, everyone, for participating. We're here to help you. So, you can see them scrolling through here. Loads of comments coming in. We'll get to those as we go through. I'll try and pick them out as appropriate during the show. We have got one come in that was mentioned about the evictions and the ban on evictions. That's obviously quite a big deal. How's that affecting you, Jim? Obviously, that's now been extended to the 23rd of August due to COVID. Are you having non-paying tenants, and what are you doing about them?
Yeah, it's not the non-paying tenants that are my problem. It's the serious antisocial tenants who are causing very great upset to my existing tenants. And we've got about 3 or 4 of those who pre-COVID, we'd started to evict. But unfortunately, the courts have gummed up. The court system has always been impractical. It's been too slow, even though I've got a system where I can get a possession order in 8 weeks. I wrote a manual called DIY Eviction, which enables me and shows a process to quickly, cheaply and legally evict tenants. I've evicted over 350 tenants using the court process. So, and that's with 100% success. So people go on about the courts being not good. They aren't good, but they do work. The legal system does work because I've proved it. However, it is slow. It takes from start to finish 2 months. And then if you have to use the bailiff, it can take even months. Now it's just, it's the average stay of a tenant's 9 months in my property. By the time you'll be able to evict them, it'll be over 9 months. It's causing a problem. So then you have to resort to your charm, your personality, tact, where you encourage the tenants out. And this is why it annoys me. And it's very hard to keep a smiling face when you are rewarding a tenant for bad behavior. What you do is bribe them out. And I think that's wrong. But most tenants, especially those who are on drugs, and drugs are the major scourge in my business. Once they get on drugs, they lose all sense of one, of their own looking after themselves, and 2, concern for other people. So what you've got to do is wait until what we call their raffling. In other words, they're desperate for some drugs, offer them a few quid and off they go. And it's as simple as that. But you've got to keep it calm, you've got to keep it professional, and you've got to be hands-on, as I say, eyeballing them and say, look, it's not working out. Don't start blaming them. Just say it's your fault. Would you move on? We're going to get rid of you. I'd rather pay you than the courts. We like the cash. And that generally works. Not always, but it works most of the time. So you're back to managing people, which is the business you're in the first place. You've got to be able to deal with people, manage people. And I find this very strange about a lot of people who want to be landlords. They want to own property, but they don't want to deal with tenants. It's about as daft as saying, I want to be a footballer, but I don't want to kick a ball. I want to be a swimmer, but I don't want to go in the water. If you want to be a landlord, learn to be a landlord. And if you want to learn to be a landlord, you've got to there's various ways of putting it. You've got to lose your ego. You've got to be a doormat. You've got to realize you are a servant to your tenants. Treat them with respect, even though they're arseholes. Don't be the same back, and you've got to move them on. So we're now going to have to polish up the old skills of dealing with people and getting them a shift, and, as I say, bribing them out.
Yeah, okay, that's a good bit of info there, Jim, and I think you're absolutely right. It's not a glamorous business until until you take the odd holiday and maybe you can afford a nice holiday. But when I get down and dirty, I'm still doing viewings myself occasionally when our lettings manager's busy or out of area and it's just a busy day. I'll sometimes jump in and do my own viewings, and we've got over 200 tenants and rental income of about 175 grand a month. So I'm still jumping in and doing my own dirty work, but you've got to be prepared to do that. I think I've read once where, Donald Trump, signs off and every single room in his hotels, every last detail to the decor, and that to me said a lot, that level of detail is always going to be important if you want to treat your property business seriously. I've got some questions here which I want to chuck in. DSP5217, whoever the hell you are, thank you for the question. It's a good question, actually. I put it up on screen, Jim, so we can both see it. Well, actually, you might not be able to see it. Sorry, I'll read it out. He says, you said you're still buying. Why aren't you waiting for the market to drop? Don't you think it will? Secondly, he's asked about Section 24 mitigation. Let's deal with those two questions separately. But why are we not buying now? I mean, I'll answer that personally. We've had 3 offers accepted this week that we're now in legals. Those particular ones are smaller HMOs, so they're going to be C4, so 6 people. A couple of them have got the opportunity to go up to 7, I think one of them 9 beds, but we'll put in a planning app for those. If we don't get them, it still works extremely well on the 6-bed model. So, I'll give you an example of one of those. One of them we're buying for, which one's probably the best example? One of them buying for 266,000. We'll get 6 beds in there. Those beds will be on average 575 per room, £575 a room per month. So, the yield, I'm not going to do that calculation live on the stream, but it'll be very quick to work out that your mortgage is going to be about 800 quid, your bill's about 500 or 600 quid max, and you're yielding, probably about £3,000 a property, something like that. So, ultimately, massive yield in it. So I don't really personally care what the market does. I don't really care if it drops. I'm going to be holding these properties for the next 20 years, putting them in trusts to my family to create intergenerational wealth. We can live off the proceeds throughout our later life. I'm 42, so from 50 onwards, I'll be winding down a bit and probably doing less deals. So that property is going to bring me income, like you said, Jim. Absolutely massive demand throughout the country for this kind of affordable accommodation. I don't see COVID affecting that. We are at 95+% occupancy, which is normal. We're a couple of percent down on occupancy. We've only dropped rents on the relets ever so slightly. Some of them are getting full rent again now. So, some people are panicking out there. I've seen a few questions come in where they're struggling to relet rooms. I don't think you need to worry about it. I think tenants are still looking, tenants are still viewing. As long as you do the viewings, social distancing. We've been doing video walkthroughs of the communal areas and the rooms that are empty and able to do that in. And we've been sending that to tenants as a first viewing. Often they'll then want to view it before they finally take it, which is great, but it weeds out the people on that for the first viewing. So there are ways around the current situation. Obviously using PPE if you have to, asking your tenants in the house to stay in their rooms until you finish the viewing briefly, because you're in and out in 5 minutes. There's various things you can do to keep your properties let and to kind of cope with the current scenario. So what's your opinion on the market? I'm sure you'll concur with that, Jim, won't you? That, are we still buying? Have you got anything in the pipeline you're buying at the moment?
Yeah, I just picked up a property, it's Thursday, on Tuesday. I'm still acquiring properties. Unlike you, I have a completely different strategy because I can in this area. I don't buy properties. I take properties and buy them later. I do what's called delayed completion or lease options. Okay. So I rarely buy. Most of the time, I pick properties up where people are just desperate to hand over the keys. I then turn them into an HMO, and it's a way of buying without any money, because the lender lends you the purchase price to buy the property. And kind of just go back a bit. I don't want to put people off. You and I are in a totally different market. I have no problems with my working tenants. Where I talk about I've got drug dealers and antisocial tenants, they're always the unemployed. You have a fairly charmed life in comparison. That's probably why you're looking so young, and I'm looking so old. No one would believe you. Actually, I'm younger than you. Because you've got the ideal tenants. You don't get problems with working tenants. The tenants you get problems with are generally unemployed. It's very rare.
Yeah, we've got no one we're looking to evict at the moment. Not a single one.
Yeah. I don't think you would. I don't. It's just the unemployed who are the problems. But then that's another story. Why do I take unemployed? But going back to the market, I think COVID will be too short to affect the market long term. So when I referred earlier to the wolves baying that prices are going to drop, I don't think it's going to happen. I think people who've got property have realised they're going to have. It's not the time to sell. Wait till after Christmas, and it will be good again. And most people who've got property can wait the 6 months to and then come back next spring, and things will be okay. So they're not going to be the deals. But also, it goes back to what we were saying about motivation. Never is the right time to buy property, and the only right time to buy property is now. That's the problem. That you're always looking back. It could be this. If you can do it now. If it works, you can get it. It stacks up. Then don't worry about whether you're getting a bargain or not. You lose too many deals trying to do a bargain.
Yeah.
Does it work? Will it make money for you? Not whether it makes the money for them. I've had property where I know the person has made 100% return by just picking it up and flipping it to me.
Yeah, definitely.
And that annoys me, but I try and forget it because I'm still doing.
Well, as long as you're making your margin,
yeah.
It doesn't matter that someone else has made theirs. That's also fine, isn't it? There's no problem with that.
Well, it's obscene for doing nothing as far as I'm concerned.
It's pretty
flipping
annoying.
a property.
We've had that. We've lost £1 million on a deal like that. We actually converted a care home into 5 large flats. We then used PD subsequently after implementing the C3 use after about 6 months to small HMOs, who end up with a 30-room HMO effectively across 5 flats. We flipped that on. We made very good money on it. We made over £1 million profit on that one deal, having developed it out. The person coming in took it on as a care home style use, like kind of a move-on accommodation, I think it was, and they leased it to a big operator for 20 years, sold the investment and sold it for another $1 million on top, just by putting a lease in place. So a bit annoying we didn't have that connection to the care home provider at that time, but they made £1 million for the relationships they had. So fair enough.
Yeah.
I think, I agree. There's no time like the present. I think my view very much, and I've read this, I'm a big believer in that success can be taught, and that's part of my passion through my teachings and writing my books and trying to pass on my knowledge, is that I believe it's entirely teachable. And what I've read through hundreds of entrepreneurs' books that I've read over the years is that go out there and learn it for yourself, get it done, but do the opposite of the masses. I'm sure we've all heard that. And currently the masses are panicking and stressing about COVID and trying to survive. Whereas sounds like you and I, Jim, are going out now. Sure, the first month or so we're very cautious, and it was plan for the worst and hope for the best. But then very quickly, it's been turning into acquisitions and picking up some incredible bargains that are, easily 20% below market value. And that's not to say the whole market's dropped to that level. I totally don't think it has. But there are some people that need to sell now, that want to sell now, that will be taking a little bit of a hit. But if you don't need to sell, I'd say hold on to it for at least a year. I personally don't think there's a huge recession coming. I think it's going to be a little bit slow, but I think that's an ideal buying market. I'm absolutely excited by the next 12 months to see what we can pick up on an even better yield, and then that will only improve into the distance going forward. So actually, I've got a question here. I've just answered it, I think, but Chanjit, one of my mentees, lovely to have you on, Chanjit. Thanks for joining us. He's asked, what are your thoughts on the market? Are we heading for the biggest recession? So what's your general market sentiment, Jim? I guess specific to your area, but maybe the market as a whole throughout the UK? Bit of both? What are your thoughts?
No, I don't think we're going for a recession. And even if it does, doesn't matter, because property does better in recession. Rented property, I should say, as long as the lenders don't start trying to pull the loans in, which is one of the problems we had in 2008. They never actually did, but they kept threatening to pull the loans in. It just makes getting finance very, very difficult.
Let me elaborate on that, Jim, for those that wouldn't be aware of that. So what was happening is these perceived market drops in values was putting pressure on the LTV ratios of the property, and loans were getting called in, or you're being asked to top up the equity to bring the loan to value back to the correct levels. That's what I understood to be. Is that correct, Jim?
That's absolutely spot on.
Yeah, and that, you've got to be careful with the terms of your mortgage, because they're fully entitled to go and do a valuation and do exactly that, and it brings their risk down in line with the market price. So that's definitely something to be aware of. But as you say, recessions are the best time for tenants, because if people aren't buying, potentially developers, certainly the bigger developers, house builders, might not be building as many houses. Finance might not be as readily available, which means the supply-demand imbalance gets worse, which means people rent, which means rents go up. So in a recession, us landlords that have got decent portfolios, we're kind of like, yeah, we might, we're going to buy cheap and we're going to hold long term and our rents are going to go up. It's not a bad place to be, is it?
The only thing that I think is going to spoil the party is you have to learn to deal with unemployed tenants. And that is a completely different market, a nightmare in some ways. I always say that my very best tenants and my very worst tenants are the unemployed. The very best tenant is the one who stays forever, pays, does not complain. I've just described long-term unemployed. And the other side is you've got the antisocial tenants who cause enormous problems for you.
Definitely. I'm going to put you on the spot, Jim, if you don't mind. The astute landlord has asked, Jim, it's rumoured you're selling your portfolio, ?
Yeah. I got offered about a year ago. Someone said they're looking to buy portfolios and they would offer me market value. And I said, fine. If you want to do that, I'll take it. It's not all my portfolio, it's part of it, because I've got a varied portfolio. I've got rent to rent, I've got a lot of JVs, I've got other properties. So part of it, yes, but I don't think it's going to happen because I think COVID is the last nail in the coffin. Here's a bit of a sharing. I got sucked in by people who what they said to me is, we want to buy your properties and we'll give you a good price. And this is going to be a very discreet purchase. It's not even got into the public domain like this.
There you go. Sorry,
discreet purchase. We're going to buy.
I just added to that. Sorry.
And we're going to give you a good price for it. And I thought, yeah, okay, I might as well do it. I'm not getting any younger. It's an opportunity. So I thought, yeah, I'd take it. But all they were doing was looking to flip it. And then they couldn't find any buyers. And it's got down to the point that everyone is dog knows that it's being. Thank goodness the tenants haven't got wind of it, because that would upset them. Because as miserable as I am, and I accept that, my tenants seem to love me. And they seem to like you as the landlords. I think it would be a bit of a shock to some of the tenants if they thought that I'm no longer going to be their landlord. There's a relationship there. You've got to put over to your tenants that they are important, they can look after them. Every one of my tenants can phone me. They've got my number. I've got 1,000 tenants. Very few landlords can say that. They don't want to deal with their tenants. I don't mind. I love my tenants. If they've got a problem, I usually say to them, have you dealt with the area manager or whatever it is? But you've got a problem, I will deal with it. Just as I deal with the staff, you can always come to me, you can always talk about it, but deal with the lines of communication that are there. So yes, if you've got a few quid there and you want to give me market value for my properties, they're up for sale. And I think any entrepreneur would take that view. Everything is for sale at the right price.
I was going to add to that whole section there, Jim, that if anyone wants my portfolio at full market price, they are more than welcome to come and get it. We've got best part of 30 million portfolio under management in our own ownership at the moment. And if someone wants to give me very close to that, they are welcome to it, and I'll carry on and build another portfolio. You can't stop me.
That's
carrying
the problem,
on
isn't it?
Right?
You can't get it out of stuff. What are you going to do with it? Just go ahead and go buy some more.
Cash in and go and buy some more and double up.
Yeah. Yes.
Everything's for sale in property, in my view. Don't take this out of context, but most things in life are for sale, barring relationships and certain dubious things like that. A certain film comes to mind with Julia Roberts in. I forget what it was called now. But ultimately, portfolio, all my properties are for sale at a decent price. I don't want to get inundated with crappy leads and people trying to flip it, though. As you say, I've had plenty of buyers that have done that to me in the past, and we're very astute on that now. We're very careful when we look at offers, who's making that offer, what their track record is, what their proof of funds is, make sure it's not printed out on their laptop at home, and they're genuine buyers. But yeah, everything's for sale. Why not? Crack on, do some more business. Got some more questions here, actually. I want people to send messages in the chat, please. We had a little flurry there when I last mentioned it. And yeah, really grateful for that. Keep them coming. I'm trying to pick out the best ones that are relevant to the chat as we go along. So do keep these questions coming. We're kind of covering COVID, we're covering strategies. And interestingly there, Jim, you talked about rent to rent. You've got some rent to rent. I want to touch upon that if I may. And I also want to touch saturation. Ramirez emailed in when he registered for the podcast. Do you feel the market is getting saturated for HMOs? Now, obviously, that's going to be area dependent, but what's your view on that? And also your views on rent to rent. How's rent to rent working for you, and why aren't you just buying? Is it just because you can get more under control with rent to rent and then buy them later once you've added the value? What's your kind of rent to rent strategy, and why are you still doing rent to rent, being such a big landlord?
Right. I should actually correct it. I will say rent to rent's for muppets. I do rent to buy. So I take a property.
Okay, lease options, yeah.
And it's usually I'm not in the position to buy it, or the asking price for the property is pretty too high, but I can rent it and make money on renting it out. Mm-hmm. So I will take it on, and I'll agree a price now with a long completion date. Fingers crossed that the market increases, rents increase, and I'll be able to buy it. So I'm in effect pegging the price on expected inflation in prices. So I've got the right to buy it.
Are you exchanging contracts on that with a delay completion, or are you doing a lease option?
I generally do a lease option on it. It's a very informal way of doing it. Yes, I agree the people could back out off the deal, but hey ho, if it costs you nothing, what have you lost? So I'll take on, if I come across them, I don't go looking for them. I've got a few rent to rents, mainly because they make such good money and the owners won't sell. So I just continue with those. So yeah, I mean, I just take the opportunities they have. The problem is you tend to get fixed into a rail track, and you don't realise there's other opportunities to be had. I kill myself over the number of deals I've lost because I just didn't have the flexibility of mind to say, oh, yeah, that would have worked. I just tended to say, no, this is what I want to do. And I've always been worried about saturating the market. When I had 8 HMOs, I was told by one of these business consultants that I'd saturated the market and I should hold fire until I'd let all my 8 properties and had a queue waiting to move in. Well, that never happens because you've always got voids in your property. I know you said 95%. I think that's very brave of you to say it, because most of the bullshitters in this business, well, I'm not saying you're a bullshit, don't get the wrong term there, but a lot of people pretend that they're always perfect. You have voids. It's the nature of the business that you have voids. And I stopped buying for a year, and then I started to buy. Now I've got 130 odd properties. I'm still buying. Where is saturation? I'm not sure. I'm not sure how you determine these things. I'm a very strange person to talk to. I'm a big landlord and I don't know what I'm doing. I just go out and do something because
You're just ploughing on and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I'm hoping for. You're absolutely right, because I can't work it out. How do you determine demand? Because demand is affected by how many people want the property and how many landlords are coming into the market. And I can't determine how many people want properties, and I can't determine how many more landlords are coming into the market. I see other people start. You see people come and go. I look upon it as coffee shops in the high street. How many more coffee shops can the high street take? And anyway, does it matter? Because I am the best in the area. I make sure my properties are the very best they can be. And if you're good at what you're doing and you have empathy for your tenants, they will let to you. You've got to have staff who show they care. It's not always about the fabric. It's a lot to do with being receptive to people when they call up, as soon as they answer the phone, follow them through. Is the property ready to let? Are you flexible on how you let? Then you can get business, even though there's loads of other people in the business who don't give such good service. So our properties are professionally dressed, made to look good, even though they're not what you and I would want to live in.
No, exactly. We're hitting a certain demographic of someone in their 20s or 30s, whether it's professionals or blue collar workers, and creating a product for them. And I always say to investors that are looking to kind of buy one of my buildings, we wouldn't want to live in a 20 square meter room, but someone in their 20s, that's what they have to do because of supply and demand. First time buyer age is very high. And if you make that quality micro studio or a nice double ensuite bedroom, that's actually what people need right now at an affordable price point. So it makes a lot of sense all round. Yeah, I want to ask, we've got a couple of questions coming in. Keep the questions coming, please, guys. We are super excited to have your questions in here. I've only had a couple more since I last mentioned it. So if you want help, if there's anything on your mind with regarding HMOs, obviously you can reach out to Jim or myself. We both offer various training courses and various training things, whether it's free stuff on the forum and ebooks and cheap books. You pick up my Investing in International Real Estate for Dummies book there. Jump on and get that, because that's got a lease option chapter. It's got a rent to rent chapter, very topical what Jim's talking about there, and it will teach you all about those. Some of the most powerful tools you can get if you don't have a huge amount of capital, provided you have a little bit of capital and you've got the knowledge and experience to go out and do some due diligence. You can go and do some great deals there with much less capital down. We've been asked to, Dr. Chong has asked you specifically there, Jim, could you provide some tips on the type and profile of unemployed tenants you take on? And he's also asked, doesn't delayed completion trigger SDLT, although the completion is years down the line? So that's a good question, actually, that second one. SDLT, are there any SDLT implications for your lease option deals?
I don't do delayed completions. I do lease options, but I don't think it is. I think your stamp duty is only payable on completion. But do ask your solicitor on that one. I'm not sure, but
yeah, I mean,
I simply don't know that one.
No, that's okay. That's what we leave. That's what we leave the lawyers to. And I'd be guessing if I asked that properly. But I think it also determines the length of the lease. If you're up to 7 years, you can actually phrase it more like an AST. I think that 7 years is the maximum for ASTs. So I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong on that, but off the top of my head, if you go over that, you're actually talking about potential SDLT on the lease itself from day one. So it does depend on the lease often and how long it is and the nature of the lease. If it's like a full repairing lease, for example, the extreme is a 99 or 125 year lease, which would be a lot of flats get bought that way. And we're not talking those kind of levels. We're talking shorter term for a number of years generally when we're talking lease options.
Interesting point there, Nick. And I don't know, but I checked it out because someone accused me of this the other day. I don't think you pay stamp duty unless you charge a premium. You're paying a premium on the lease. But again, that's for the lawyers to look at.
Something to look
so
into, though.
A lot of the times, just get on and do it. Don't worry about the technicality.
Let the lawyers deal with those kind of things.
Yeah, leave it to them. Just do it. I mean, the trouble is, it's all very well. You can spend all your time tying yourself up in legalities. I've got a legal background, so I should be more aware than most. But it gets in the way. The lawyers just do the deal. If you can do it, if it doesn't cost you anything, what is it? What have you lost? You got it for nothing. You lose it. It's a bit like finding a wallet, picking it up. It's full of money. Then someone comes running up and goes, "Sorry, that's my wallet." Oh, fine. Yeah, obviously, you give it back to them. But if you got it for nothing, don't worry. Just do it. And life is temporary. Everything is temporary. If you try and get into legal battles, you can't afford it. I've been in there. And I only got halfway through and it cost me 50 grand. I won. But what's worth spending 50 grand over winning? It isn't. And that's your big problem. And the lawyers will say you'll avoid this if you use our services. Yeah, but it costs you 5 grand to use their services. I've done 22 rent to rents, virtually on a handshake. If I paid for a lawyer 5 grand each time, that would cost me 100 grand. No one of those deals is worth 100 grand. How am I going to lose because I haven't got it tied up watertight legally? And you never will get it tied up watertight legally. So though I've got a legal background, sometimes I say, just get on and do it and stop worrying about the detail. It's an excuse for not doing something.
Okay, no, fair enough. I mean, I can't disagree with you entirely, but on the flip side, I'd say it's extremely important to have a good power team in and check a few things like that. I don't want to be personally racking up an SDLT liability where I maybe should have been paying it, or I could have negotiated the contract in a slightly better form. So I'll half agree with you on the side of pushing forward and getting loads of deals done and, dealing with the problems when they crop up. And actually, if you do 10 deals and one's a problem, that's going to make you 9 deals better than someone that's done one perfect deal. So, there's definitely something to be said about getting cracking and getting going and getting building and doing deals. On the flip side, I say if you've got a good lawyer that's reactive and can whip you up the right contracts quickly and doesn't make it over overzealous in terms of the legal, paperwork, then I'd say that's definitely a suggestion from my side.
Nick, can I ask a question?
Of course you may. Fire away.
Have you got a number of that lawyer? Does he exist?
I do.
Is he in your fantasy?
I do. I can give you their details.
Good.
Send me a message if anyone would like my lawyer's details. They're very, very good. Moving on, we have got the astute landlord is asking again. Thank you. Keep the comments coming, guys, in the comments box to whichever side of this video it is. I think if you're looking at desktop, it's on the right on YouTube. Chuck in your comments. We're getting through those. We're getting through the rest of the chat show that people have emailed in as well. So astute landlord has asked, Nick, what do you think about rent to rent HMO, rent to HMO when done professionally? I think it absolutely depends on the professional part. Rent to rent has had a bad name in various ways because of illegal subletting and these kind of unscrupulous practices. Again, it's who is the person doing it. If you're doing it professionally, you've got the permission of the landlord. The landlord's got the permission of his lender. You get the right HMO licensing in place. You put the right regulations in place. If you do all of those things correctly, you get a correct contract with the landlord. The landlord knows exactly what's going on, and they're comfortable with it, and it's a win-win deal for them. Some nice guaranteed rent for a few years. Absolutely, I think it's a brilliant strategy. The 3 properties we're buying this month are all going to be 6-bed. A couple of them have got, as I mentioned, opportunity for more beds subject to planning. Because C4 you can only have up to 6 beds without a planning app. Over C4 becomes sui generis HMO, needs a full planning app. And for anyone that isn't aware of the planning process for the various types of HMO, look onto the council's government's planning portal, type in planning portal and planning use class bands. There's a planning use classes. You'll see the information there on the various use classes, so C4 small HMO. Without waffling off onto a tangent, ultimately those deals are brilliant. 6 beds, we're getting them so cheap. If those were to be rented, probably be renting them for about $1,200 a month. Chuck your bills on top. You're into the property for $1,500 or $1,600, and you got 6 beds renting at say £600, so £3,600 income. So there's a couple of grand to be made a deal there, and that's in the Thames Valley area, Berkshire, Hampshire. Obviously, it varies throughout the country, so you've got to do your numbers. And part of when I mentor people, I help them with their sourcing strategy, and I help them find their goldmine areas, and we'll analyse deals together to find areas that work where the yields are right, and you can make a decent margin. And with that couple of grand, you can afford 2 or 3 vacancies a month if you need it. And that's why I always say HMOs. I think HMOs are much less risky. I'll come to you on a moment, Jim, what your opinion is. I think you'll probably concur, being a massive HMO landlord, but I'll assume you'll concur that HMOs are less risky than normal single lets in many cases, because if you've got 6 tenants in one house, 3 of those tenants, maybe even 4, could be vacant, and you're still covering your rent and your bills and your mortgage. Or rent if you're renting it as a rent to rent, or your mortgage if you're a landowner or a site owner. So I think HMOs, if well run, are less risky than single lets. If you have a single let, you've got a massive void, and I don't like massive voids. I can cope with the odd room coming available, and through general turn, like you, we have probably 10 or 15 tenants moving out. You have 20 a week. We have about probably about 15 to 20 a month. So not as many as you. We don't have as many rooms as you, but it's just natural churn. So you're always going to have a little void, whether it's a week or 2 that someone can't move in before the next person moves in, that kind of stuff. You'll get voids. Anyone that says they've got 100% voids are lying. We've got extremely good void rate, but it can never be 100% just through that sort of turnover. I'm waffling on. What are we talking about, Jim? Let's go back to get to the thread. Will there be new opportunities to step into the HMO market or expand your current portfolio off the back of this pandemic? Tim Huxtable asks, what new technology will become essential for HMO landlords moving forward? And Paul Lilly asks, what will happen to the student HMO market? Obviously, some of the universities are offering online lessons now for the next academic year. So a couple of questions chucked in there, Jim. So technology, will that be affecting us? Have you got any new technology you are using or thinking of using, video viewings, all this kind of stuff? Any particular systems? And then the student market, I don't know if you have any student HMOs or have any experience, but have you got any opinion on that? Like, are there any universities near you that you're afraid those properties are becoming vacant and thus will affect the demand on your properties? Any concerns there from you? Any experiences?
Right. Can we go back to the question that we had before then about your HMOs? You've actually tapped into a very good market. What do you say the properties cost? 240 grand.
Well, the one we've got an offer on, we've got three on offers this week. One is 266.
266.
Six bed. Average rent 575 to 600. Post COVID, I'm getting in that area. I've been getting up to 650 for an ensuite, but I'm conservatively putting the prices at 575 to 600 per room average. I think I can get more, and rents will increase, but that's COVID rent. So I know it'll work easily on that, and we might get 625 to 650 on the bigger 2 or 3 in that property post COVID when that comes back. We've also got another one we purchased for 320 that's got the opportunity to be a 9 bed if we convert the garage and split the big lounge. But we've only got planning for 6. We're going to buy it at 6. We're going to do the conversion over time, apply for planning for those extra 2 or 3 rooms. But that could be, if we can get the planning, 9 bed for 320. Again, average rent 600 on that. Bigger rooms in that property as well. Plenty of parking. Massive opportunities out there at the moment for these. And those are kind of less than probably 10-year-old properties or less. One of them was about 8 years old, so sort of new build style. So they're low maintenance. We're just picking up people that are maybe the first or second owner in a new build estate, but they're larger family homes that lend themselves beautifully to chopping up into rooms.
That's what I love talking to someone like yourself. You've got it right. I love it. Just slipped in. I'll go first for 6 beds and then bring it up to 9. Because you know that if you try and go through the front door and say, I want to plan for 9, you'll get no chance. The whole estate will come out against you and object to you getting planning. Yeah. But you go in 6, and here's something you probably don't know, Nick. Read my book, Planning in HMOs. I write loads of books. Okay. And the one is Planning in HMOs. Did you not realise that there's no law that says limit is 6? If you read my book, it tells you on page 98, I think it is, because I quote this so many times, 91, it says that you can have more than 6. It depends on whether it's a material change. And if you read the RLA, now the National RLA website, they say on there that you could probably have up to 9 without having planning permission. It's a myth. Wow. That you have to have 6. So what
is the C4? Let's drill down into that, because I had heard that material change was key. I had heard that phrase bounded around. Can you go into that a bit more, Jim? So C4 is a very clear planning class in the planning order, and it says for HMOs up to 6 bedrooms. It then states anything that is not a 6-bed HMO or less, presumably 3 to 6, becomes a sui generis HMO class, which sui generis is a class for anything that's not specifically banded in the other classes. Things like guest houses, hostels, sui generis HMOs, that kind of stuff. So
you don't have to have
more. Have you done this? Does this work? Have you got some proof that this works? Because this will be very exciting for a lot of people.
Yes, and you're not going to like it. So here you are. Plug. Get my book.
Right. Where can we get your book, by the way, please? Where can we buy that?
You can get it on my website. It's only available on my website, HMODaddy.com.
Right. Everyone, log on there, buy Jim's book. I'm personally going to be buying it, unless Jim is very kind to send me a free copy.
Of course, I'll send you a free copy, Nick. Thank you. It's only £9.97. What's that between friends?
For postage.
Plus postage. Although the control limit of 6 person defines the scope of the C3 dwelling house and C4 house and multiple occupation class, this does not imply that any excess of that number must constitute a breach of planning control. You try and quote that to your planning officer and you go, take no notice. To which you go, there. In other words, you've got to have the balls to say no to them. So go in and have 6. And if you have 7 or 8, let's see what they do about it. Okay. Because they have to take enforcement action against you. But don't flare it up, flag it up. Be very quiet about it. Go in as 6, get it established as 6, and then gradually increase the numbers. What crime are you committing? You're not. You're committing no crime at all. You're providing valuable, low-cost, quality housing that is desperately needed. You're on the side of the angels. But for some reason, planners don't like it. And they're going to hate me for telling you this.
Let's hope the planners aren't watching.
I don't mind the planners watching. The trouble is, you've got 2 types of planners. You've got the ones who love to say no, the right sort of, put it this way, Hitler missed out on him in his SS. And then you've got the others who are actually thinking, caring people and want to make a difference to society and are frustrated by the damn system. And if they think you're doing a good job, often turn a blind eye. And I've had many planners who've gone along and seen it. When they know you're doing a good job, that's it. What they don't want is you fill a house full of wasters who are causing nightmares. So you've got a modern estate and you've put unemployed into that estate, and they just the crime level goes up through the roof. Quiet, professional people, mind their own business, park where they should do, and not others. Don't have parties. You don't have a problem with them.
I think I'll lead on with a bit of advice that I would have on that as well, Jim, is, it might be worth getting a sort of, it may not be worth getting a lawful development certificate on the 6 beds initially, so the council on side with it. I'll get your take on that in a moment. But also just, running it really, really well and making sure that you've got all the amenities in the bin stores and bike stores, putting the stuff the council like. And I've had some experience with councils challenging us on various sites as well, not for this specific issue, but specifically the care home to HMO conversion, where they were saying, oh no, you've jumped straight to HMO, you always wanted to build an HMO. And the answer was no, we implemented our C3 first. And we won that battle with the council, I'm pleased to say, although a few stressy weeks. Ultimately, I'm losing my thread, sorry. But ultimately, you're saying challenge the council, do it anyway to the right standard, wait for them to challenge you. And actually, I know the bit of advice I was going to give was what I've been asked to do previously. It was actually putting up some fences that were neighbours hated, and a pod in the back garden for a communal lounge in one of our HMOs. And the neighbours complained, oh, you can't build that, it's too high. And the guy came along, and because the land was sloping down, there was a question of, is it too high if you take the bottom right-hand corner of the building, because that's 6 inches too high, whereas the rest of the building wasn't. And he just said to me, with a nudge and a wink, put an application in and it will sail it through. He needed a planning app in to approve it, to basically shut the neighbours up. So the councils are quite, can be a bit weak in that respect. Rather than fight the neighbour and say, look, this isn't an issue, he just said, put a planning app in, which we'll ignore their comments on and approve. And then there's nothing, that was their process of shutting the neighbours up. So that's a good bit of advice, I would say, for anyone experiencing challenges. See if the council planning officer is on board with you, try and get their attitude to it, because they're the one that's going to decide it ultimately under delegated powers.
I agree with you. You don't seek confrontation. If the neighbours have got a problem, I've even chopped down their trees, put up fences for them, cleared their rubbish up, all the rest of it to keep the peace. It's the fear of the unknown. Once you've got your tenants in there, providing they're not causing problems, all the objections go away. They just disappear. Providing they know, if you've got a problem, phone Jim, he'll come and sort it out. And as I say, they've all got my number. They phone me up at some strange hours sometimes. Jim, your bins need emptying. Yeah, sure. Send someone round, get it sorted. And that's you need to do. It's a people business. You've got to look after people. I've got
a good one here for you, Jim, and very topical. Thank you, Claire Bartley. She says, but your license, HMO license, specifies how many occupants are allowed. So leading on from this discussion, really good comment there. I would suggest that you'd submit the HMO application, the license, for the correct number of occupants and build and spec the house to the higher number of occupants, and wait for the planning to come knocking, right? I think planning departments are getting more and more stringent looking at the HMO license app. They are two different departments. And we've had, situations where HMO licensing is one thing and planning's another, and they don't talk. So we're not going to rely on that kind of stuff. And that's, from my areas that I've operated in, that's a bit long gone. So, planning departments are picking up on what the HMO licenses are doing. It's like a kind of an easy list for them to go through, isn't it? 9-bed HMO license. Oh, well, hang on. That's only got planning for 6, or, under the assumed rules that it's only allowed 6, that you're just challenging, which is interesting to hear. What are your thoughts on that then? When applying for the HMO license, Jim, what do you apply for an HMO license? I assume you do, and if so, do they not pick up on it, or what's the? Tell me what you do.
Thanks. You make a good point, Claire. You're throwing 3 balls in the air here, and the what ifs in this business
If you're worried about them, you never do it. Just got to get on and do it, and then see what happens. And the worst that can happen is you go back to being 6. You got the planners; they generally don't react. You must license for the correct number of people because it's a criminal offence. And as I had a bitch earlier on, they're looking to fine you and impose civil penalties. So you license for what you have to license for.
Yeah.
So
and just hope they.
This is the odd thing.
Hope they don't pick up on the planning.
Well, they do or not. They rarely do. So I've got 6-bed HMOs. I apply for 12 people because could have couples in, and sometimes it goes through, sometimes it doesn't. But if they pick up on it, they don't know what to do because the departments, as you quite rightly say, don't seem to work together particularly well. And they've got to give you the license because they're not connected. Though I've got one now who is pretending to be a planning officer, even though he works in licensing, and he says, I can't license that. Well, I'll just wait and appeal it. There is no answer to that, Claire, but you must license for the correct number of people and then see what happens. Your big problem now is the lenders. They are getting so anal that they think that if you got more than 6, you're going to have a certificate of lawful development and all the rest of it. So the answer to that one is apply for finance with 6 people, license for 12 people, and let's see if the planners come knocking. And if they do, deal with it. And as you said, depending on the planner, one will tell you how to get out of it. Another says, you can't. And then you just wait for the enforcement notice to come. And you can be waiting. I'm waiting now probably the best part of 12 years for about 50 enforcement notices to come into the post. I run down to the post box every morning looking for these enforcement notices, and they never have come. You just got to learn to put up with it. As I say, you feel like you're in Afghanistan. Rockets could come over the fence any time. That's the life you're living as an HMO landlord. If you don't want to put up with it, and this is where you are. Even though I'm HMO Daddy, I could easily be single let daddy, because you can do the same with single lets as you do with HMOs. If you can buy single lets at 80%, you can borrow 85%, you can get all your money back out, and you have generally long-term tenants. Yes, the yields are very, very little, but you have far less work to do. So if you've got an area of reasonable demand for single lets, that you can pick up properties at a low price, you could do the same. I'm not saying you've got to be an HMO landlord. What I'm saying is property is good. You can do it as an HMO. You can do it as single lets. Think of your strategies. HMOs are far more work, especially if you've got unemployed tenants. You've got a breeze in comparison to me. Professional tenants, you hardly ever have any problems with them. All my problems are with unemployed tenants. The working tenants cause me very little problems, and single lets virtually cause you no problems at all. I think I could manage personally a few hundred single lets in my area by myself, and I'm talking about hundreds of them, because you just get nothing apart from when tenants leave. So all strategies work. I just got into HMOs, and it worked because you could value them on income, but that's getting much harder now. Are you getting your houses that you're turning into 6-bed value? Well, I suppose at 300,000, it doesn't make much difference. The value on income or bricks and mortar virtually the same way, do they?
Yeah, I mean, for that purchase price, the bricks and mortar, it's a family home that we're buying. That's very defined price, so there'll be no issues with valuing it on day one. What we're going to try and do is we're taking lending. There's now 75% lending available from a number of lenders. Paragon is one we're trying a mortgage with, 75% of that acquisition price. 25% deposit in. That's just on the bricks and mortar value or a single let value. We're buying it as a buy to let. What we'll then do is do the minor works for the HMO, which is like making sure the fire doors are there, the fire alarms, fire blankets, all the safety measures, door closers, etc., signage. We will then let it and immediately, sort of pre-let, but try and flip it on to another finance in 3 to 6 months' time as the HMO, and then try and lend on investment value. And that will then hopefully pull out some of that initial 25% deposit, if not all of it. I think the investment value on that particular site was going to be best part of 500,000. So you're taking something worth 366, spending 30 or 40 grand refurbishing it to HMO, high end, and it's worth £500,000. I don't want to say it's paper money, but it's easy money, isn't it, Jim? These conversions, if you find the right deal and you know how to source properly, and all the there's a lot of things can trip you up in HMOs. The devil's in the detail, and obviously you and I both mentor people. That's what we go through with the mentorships. At each stage, it's kind of like, right, what can trip you up on the licensing? What can trip you up on the planning? What can trip you up on the management and the running of it? And where to, what sort of fire alarms to put in? That sort of detail. You get it wrong, you just waste money. So that's where I sort of kind of try to give extreme value when I'm mentoring people, because one phone call with me for a few £100 might save them $3,000 on buying the wrong fire alarm. Something as simple as that.
You're right.
Finding a deal in the first place to make some $200,000 for what an hour's mentoring. It's kind of, I love giving that value. I love helping people and showing them what's possible, and I want to see them get results. And that's why I only work with a small number of people. But pitch over. Try not to pitch. I'm just trying to help, really. Dr. Chong has asked twice, and I'm sorry for sticking with us, Doctor. I hope you're still with us. He's asked if you could please ask Jim about selecting an unemployed tenant profile. Is there an optimum number of bedrooms for an HMO? 5 seems to be a good start, but it is also trigger for HMO mandatory licensing. So he's asking about your tips for picking unemployed tenant profiles, and also then what's the optimum number of bedrooms for an HMO?
Right. I've written a book, Introduction to Letting to the Unemployed. It's a good read, Dr. Chung. Have a look at it.
Excellent.
The optimum unemployed tenant is over 50, worked most of his life, semi-skilled, lost his job. At that age, in this area, he's very unlikely to get employed again. His wife has kicked him out. He owned his own house. You look after him, providing his wife doesn't have him back, you'll have a tenant for life. He's responsible. They cause you no problems. The ones that cause you the problems are the younger ones, and they can be a nightmare. It's like having a house load of chimpanzees. They'll rip the place apart. So you've got to be very, very careful. I'm not saying all the older ones are good and all the younger ones are bad, but that's really is a sort of generalization.
Generally.
And the big problem in my area is the social landlords don't want the youngsters. They pick the older ones. So we're both competing for the same market as such. With unemployed, it's intuition in selection. And if you make a bad move, you've got to then remove them very, very quickly. People up north are used to this type of business. Down south, you don't have to take the unemployed, so you don't bother. You don't want to take the risk. You can get professionals, they behave, and they act correctly. You're moving into a whole different world with the unemployed. And as a general rule, even I'm trying to get don't take unemployed. Back in 2009, I had no choice. I went from 6% unemployed to over 60% in 3 months. That's how bad the recession hit my area. And I think we're going to get a lot more unemployed. It was so bad. While down south, you're probably saying, what recession? So much different. So watch there. And what was the best of the unemployed? I've forgotten what his other question was.
The other question was, what's an optimum number for HMOs? Is 5 beds a good optimum number to start with?
Yeah. A number of rooms, I think, for the trouble is it doesn't seem to work. There's a rule of 5 in this business. The first 2 pay for the mortgage or the rent, if you're doing rent to rent. The third one pays the utilities. The fourth covers your costs. It's the 5th tenant that makes the profit. Yeah. So if you run on a 4-bed,
agree with that. Yeah.
It doesn't really work. While if you get a 6th one is your profit, so is your 7th, so is your 8th. That's why 9-bed is fantastic. But the problem is 9 doesn't work well as a group unless you have them living separately. So what I generally have is, if I have something like that, I'd have probably 4 share the facilities, and there's 5 studios attached to it where people are not sharing. So you've got the building, which gives you 9, or try and go all studios. A studio, by the way, means you've got an ensuite and a kitchenette. And if you do that, all no sharing, all behind one door. Each unit is separate, nothing shared. You don't have to license it. So that keeps the council away from you. So you don't have them coming. The big problem you got
get
now.
Planning for that, obviously. So when you go self-contained, then you're into a separate C3 unit per fully self-contained unit. So you've got to be careful on the planning, obviously, haven't you?
Yeah. So that's why you've got to be careful how you do it. So you start off with 6 with a shared kitchen, and then you gradually develop into 9. You don't try and go through the front door. You do it by the back door and develop things that way round.
Okay.
So you just got to be clever about how you go about doing these things. Also, I think very hard now if I was to go into HMOs, because the legislation has in the last 3 years got draconian, I can't even pronounce it, draconian against landlords. It's becoming very criminalised. We're becoming the motorists, discriminated against big way as landlords. So think twice. If you're going to do it, you've got to be much, much more professional. You've almost got to have a degree in housing. You've got to know what the rules are and keep to them and know how to get around them. It's going to become a much, much more difficult market if you're going to do it that way around. So the ideal from the tenant's point of view is 4, but that is unlikely to make you money as a landlord. There's a contradiction there. So housing standards have actually pushed and gone against providing good housing with the licensing and the rules. That has caused the problem. So I think you're going to get a move away from HMOs, which is good for those landlords who remain in the market because it reduces competition.
Yeah, it was like we were saying earlier, wasn't it? It's potentially all this government regulation is obviously, I'm sure they partly do it with good intention to give good quality accommodation and stop these kind of slum landlord situations and illegal subletting, all that kind of horrible stuff. But ultimately it pushes it into the hands of more experienced operators or people that are prepared to put the time and effort in to learn about it and run it, or get expert help, like mentoring with us, for example, to get it done and not to make the mistakes, to get the knowledge, the education done first. So on the flip side of what you said earlier, Jim, just jump in and get it done. Do that, but with the right education, the right support, the right people mentoring you, so that you don't make the mistakes, and then you can really leverage your portfolio quickly and scale up rapidly. And that's kind of the key, isn't it? To grow at a sensible rate where you can not get tripped up too badly. I want to move on, if I may, now, Jim, to Section 24. We've had a few questions come in on that. Thank you for being patient, anyone that's asked about that. We've got DSP 5217, whoever you are. Put your name maybe in the next comment, please. We can give you a shout out. He's asking about, can we talk about Section 24? When we gave, I think it was my example of the property that I bought, and I said the mortgage was $800 a month, but you'll only get the 20% tax credit for this. Do you recommend incorporating? Another Section 24 question. Where have we got? We've got another couple that are pinged in here. Where was the other one? Sorry, flicking through. I'll put the comments on the screen. Look, then you can actually see what I'm doing here. Thank you for your comments. Keep them coming in, by the way, guys. DSP there also asked, do you recommend incorporating Section 24? Do you run your HMOs inside a corporate wrapper? I'd like to hear your views on that, Jim. I'll quickly tell you what I do. I definitely do corporate wrappers. Since Section 24 came in, we are now buying every single site, including a small 6-bed HMO, in a limited company SPV. That is owned by our group company. Our group company works with private investors, giving them double-digit fixed rate of return under loan notes. So we work with private investors. If you're a private investor wanting to be hands-off watching this, reach out. We can give you an excellent rate of return, fully secured on our portfolio of UK properties. So, I consider that to be a very low risk and portfolio diversified investment. So the header company does the lending with private investors, each SPV owned below. And I think that works really well if you're holding long term. If you're selling, if you do sell that on, you can sell the SPV itself. If you keep it clean and do all the management on the high level companies, you're selling a clean SPV, which means the stamp duty will be less for the incoming buyer. It means they don't have to go and set up their own limited company to buy it. Therefore, you're going to, with this extra 3% stamp, you're also circumventing that issue as well. So, it's a much because you're buying the shares in the company, which I believe are currently at 0.5% stamp duty, rather than the sort of surcharge 3% or whatever it is on the purchase of asset. So it works for resales, it works for holding long term, because then the money can flow up through your company system and you're only getting charged the corporation tax on the profits, and you can offset your entire finance costs. It's not for everyone. I will caveat that is the way we're doing it at the moment. We're doing it for those reasons stated, and probably a few more. There's legal protection as well, keeping stuff separated in legal companies. There can be challenges with finance by limited company lending still. Some companies don't like more than a two-tiered structure, for example. We had a problem with, I think it was LendInvest, didn't like more than a two-tier structure, and we've actually got a three-tier structure because we have our own personal family offices owning the assets in our main group company. So I would urge you to take your own advice on that. I can recommend you to some excellent people in the industry that will help you with that corporate structure and tax advice if you need it. You know, your everyday accountant probably won't be that good at that. Jim, I believe we use the same accountant. Are you prepared to give the name of your accountant?
Yeah, sure.
Who do you use at the moment?
I'm trying to. Chris Bailey.
Chris
is
Bailey. We're using
less tax for landlords.
Less tax for landlords. That would be my recommendation. Tony Gimple is their one of their founding owners. He's one of the owners. He does the property summits with us. So, you know, I work closely with Tony, trust them implicitly, and they've got extremely good tax planning that is entirely above board, but very, you know, focused on the landlord and the landlord's specific situation, making sure that any tax planning is done with the true intent of the business, not just trying to create a mitigation scheme, which obviously wouldn't be looked on favourably by the revenue. So Section 24, that's what we do. Jim, what's your kind of take on that? How do you buy your properties and what do you do? I guess tell us a bit more about your corporate structure, please.
Right, you're smart, and I applaud your idea of the clean SPV. Each property is bought in an SPV that's entirely for that, and then managed separately. That's an ideal strategy, and I wish I'd done that before. Unfortunately, I got caught with my trousers down because I bought all my properties in my own name, and I probably, like a lot of people, what do? So that's where Less Tax for Landlords, Tony Gimple, came to the rescue. So I'm using for my existing properties a hybrid trust structure, which you say is done for the right reasons and set up correctly. As for going forward, I don't know. What they say is you can carry on using the same structure for purchasing further properties if you wish. Whether to incorporate, because my strategy at the moment is not to buy any more in my own name. I help other people buy the properties. Yeah. So I do a sort of very strange thing that I call it JVing, where I will, in effect, find a property for someone, get it converted, do all the work, which I'm used to doing. I've done it hundreds of times. It's bought in the other party's name, and most of the time they buy it in a clean SPV. They just buy it in their own limited company. They're buying it, but I manage it, and we share the profit. So my guarantee is you get all your money back out, and then we share the profit. But I don't share the profit. It's you share it with my children. So it's a way of building up a portfolio, not owned by me, controlled by me, but they have a share in the deals. So what would I do if I was to buy a property myself? I'd probably have to sit down and talk to Less Tax for Landlords and see what they have to say about the best way of going about it. But there are ways doing it, and there are numerous ways of getting around these rules. This is the problem. When they change the law, all you do is then incurring yourself in costs in finding ways to avoid the liability. So just as I'm moaning about civil penalties, I now have to employ an ex-housing standards officer to act as a compliance officer to my properties, and he goes around there every few months and checks the properties. He only charges me about 12 quid a property, having spent a life filling in stupid forms saying he's checked the properties. That gives me the protection that if they ever came against me, I've covered myself. I've got him to hide behind and say he checked my properties last month, they were compliant. I am doing everything I possibly can. But it's additional cost, which then makes the business much more expensive, which has got to be passed back to the tenant. So yes, there are ways have a look, talk to, I say, Nick or myself as how to do it, as to what is personally do. But you must do something. Don't just bury your head in the sand and hope it will go away, which I thought it would. I just couldn't believe that Section 24 would continue. And I don't agree with you, Nick, that there is a reason behind it. It's just the politicians wanting to be re-elected, and they wanted to have a go at giving the landlords a good smacking. There is no rationale or reason or wanting to professionalise the profession or anything like that. A small landlord probably looks after their properties far better than I do, because they've only got 3 or 4 properties to look after, and they've got the time and concern to take care of it.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I never really thought of that. But I mean, it certainly helps people like us because we're in the game and we're not going away. So we're going to pick up these deals where the smaller landlords are being pushed out. I completely concur. Anyone watching this, if you've got any properties owned in your private names, you are committing financial suicide right now if you don't do something about your structure. Even as little as one HMO that's bringing you in, a few £100 a month, you need to get it sorted because you're throwing your money down the drain. Stump up a couple of grand in fees and get a structure done, and then you're happy. You can move forward, you can grow your portfolio, you can become a professional landlord, you can treat it like a business, treat it seriously, don't brush it under the carpet. I had a mentee recently actually that had some family ties with a couple of the properties, and that, when you've got maybe a mother or a father that are stuck in their ways a bit older, they might not want to do these kind of changes, but it's absolutely crucial. So yeah, please do get the right advice. If you'd like personal recommendations through Tony, Tony does still own shares in Less Tax for Landlords, although he's not an active day-to-day director. He is promoting and working very, very closely with the Bailey Group and Less Tax for Landlords. That was Seb B mentioned that. I'm going to answer a couple of questions here really quickly, get some value for guys watching. We want to answer your questions. Keep coming them in, please. We'll stay on, I don't know what time you need to leave, Jim. We're an hour and a half in at the moment, but if you're enjoying chatting, we'll carry on for a little while.
I love talking to people. People phone me up, they'll have a chat. If I've got time, I'll have a chat. If they want a longer consultation, just like you can pay me. I'm a tart for hire, but I'm just happy to talk to other landlords. I love the business. I love talking about it, and I want to help you. And it's not a question of, I'll give anyone 5 minutes if I'm free at the time.
Definitely
So
passion,
keep the questions coming.
Driven by passion. Seb B has asked, do we care about soundproof insulation for tenants' comfort? Personally, no, because it's quite a cost, and I've never had, I'd say no, I'm not going to say never, that wouldn't be fair. I would say we get 1 sound complaint a year. That's how little we get it, but that might be due to our tenants. What's your take on soundproofing, Jim? And do you get more complaints?
No, because we do soundproof is the reason, but we don't soundproof for soundproofing reasons. See, I'm in a different area. I've got most of my properties are 1900 properties, and they have 9-foot ceilings. And being a tight bastard, and I'm proud to be tight. I'm Scottish, and we are proud. So if you don't insult a Scotsman by calling him a tight bastard, that is actually a compliment. But when we renovate the properties, we drop the ceilings. And when we drop the ceilings, put insulation in, and it's not proper if you follow the science of how to soundproof, but it does soundproof the properties, but makes the rooms much more warmer feeling and soundproof wise. I've got your type of properties, Nick, which are modern, but I can't drop the ceilings because the ceilings are too low anyway. And the typical problem I have is a 3-story townhouse. They fit very well. We turn them into 5 studios. They're already usually 2 studios anyway, and we split it all up. And you can hear what's going on the top floor. Tenants mention it, but they seem to put up with it. So it's not a question of comfort. They don't seem to. I think they just accept it.
Yeah, I don't think they worry about it, do they? They accept they're in a house share. There's going to be a bit of noise. It's not a luxury product. We're trying to, create the best possible product. It's interesting actually hearing your comments there, because we would do everything we could to raise the ceilings in our rooms if they're there. So if we bought one of yours off you, we'd rip your insulation down to create more volume and make that apartment feel more luxurious. Obviously, it's going to cost us a bit more to heat it and possibly reduce the noise dampening. But, we're going for a different market. We're going for that higher end professional and that IT professional. And that volume, makes the place feel much nicer. But yeah, if you're going for pure cost and your tenant, won't be affected by that decision, then definitely, you're making the right decision. So good subtleties on the, deciding your tenant use when people are deciding their strategies. It's obviously critical to know what that tenant's doing, what that tenant group's doing, and exactly how to tailor your build to that tenant group so you can make the most money. That's what we're trying to do. I make the most money by raising the ceilings. You make the most money by lowering the ceilings. So there's no right or wrong answer there, is there? Brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, it's interesting how we do things differently.
Yeah, and it's critical with what you're doing, getting your strategy right from the outset, before you source the properties, because then it makes a difference, that kind of detail. Dr. Chung, great tips, thank you. We appreciate that. Glad we're giving some value. We've got, going back to the Section 24 corporate structures situation, Dr. Chung is asking a further question there about how do you get your money out of the company eventually, because it will be double taxation. So presumably you're talking about getting a 20% corporation tax at source. Then if you take it out, you're getting taxed at a dividend rate, which again is at least another 20% potentially, could be up to 30%. So an overall tax of between 40 and 50%. There's one simple answer to that, is that you can choose when you take the money out. In a corporate structure, you can leave it in there and you can reinvest it, thus only paying the 20%. So, again, touching upon Jim's setup there with the trust, if those properties are left in trust, your kids and you can live off the income from that trust and only have ever paid 20% on that initial purchase. Obviously, you'll pay some on any money you do take out after that reinvestment phase, but that can also be done very carefully and cleverly with trusts and mixed partnerships and things like that. You can also be sensible about what you run through the company as expenses, as long as they're done legitimately and for business reasons. There's lots you can run through companies to bring the sort of requirement for funds out. So there's no one size fits all, but I find, it's better than a partnership where you're just going to get taxed on all the income anyway, right? If you've got it in a partnership or in your personal name, you're getting taxed on everything, and you're getting taxed on your revenue now. So I don't think there's an option, and there is the flexibility there as to when you take it. Don't take out more than 150 grand a year, for example, if you're lucky enough to be earning that much in your portfolio, because that keeps you under a certain barrier. You might be able to distribute that with your wife. If our top company is mine and my wife on one company, and my business partner and his wife on the other, and they're the ownerships of one of our corporate structures. So me and my wife can share that profit and keep within certain tax bands, so we can keep them below certain thresholds each year and gradually take the money, leaving a lot more to reinvest. If you want to take out a big chunk of money, you're probably going to get hit by some sort of double taxation. And if you're doing a definite flip in the short term, maybe you want to buy it in your personal name and get your capital gains tax at the sort of 18% and then 28% for the higher rate. So that might be a flip strategy possibly. Again, there's no one size fits all. We're not giving tax advice or corporate structure advice here. We're telling you what we do, some of the things that are available to you. And I must stress, to get the right advice from someone like Less Tax for Landlords, Tony Gimple, and Chris Bailey, to find your specific circumstances on how you overcome that and create your own structure. So DSP 5217 is called David. Thanks for your questions, David. Really appreciate that. He's asked, leading on from the Section 24 comments, what about SDLT? Is there any way around the 3% surcharge for existing property owners? Simple answer, in my opinion, no. Jim, have you got any workarounds?
No, unfortunately, yes. The way I get around it is buying commercial properties, and make sure you've bought it before you turn it into residential. So that goes slightly against the whole idea of doing a delayed completion, because I got caught like that. Commercial property, then when we came to buy it, you exercising the option to purchase, we'd turned it into residential, and we got stuck with stamp duty, 3%. It's a cost of doing business, and it's not enough to put you off. Let me just say, stop focusing on the tax and all the tricks that you have. Just get on and do it, and let the rest take care of itself. Yes, you'll beat yourself up because it costs you a few quid, but a property, if you keep it as you should do for 40 years or so, will make so much on the long term. This is minor stuff to worry about. I find people spend too much time worried about, do I pay 20% tax or 5% VAT? Sorry, 5% VAT or 20% VAT? All that kind of thing gets in the way of getting on and doing the deals. Do the deals, pay the tax, and let the rest take place. Going back on that, isn't there entrepreneurs relief you can use for companies?
I think there might be. Might be. And again,
Okay.
Dr. Chung's challenging a couple of things here. He's saying trusts only allow 650k every 7 years. Presuming that's money into the trust. I don't believe that's correct. You can also leave stuff in your will to trust. So if you're talking intergenerational wealth, you can put it into trust for your kids when you die, which helps with inheritance planning. And I believe you can put all of it in at one time. Don't quote me on that. That's I'm just having a bit more of a estate planning meeting with the people at Less Tax for Landlords who also deal with your estate planning. So it's not just tax advice, it is estate planning and corporate structure. It all rolls into one. It's very, very important. And there's so many facets there. They're experts in the VAT, the normal corporation tax, corporate structure, inheritance tax and trust. So that's why these guys are awesome, because they'll create you a structure, however big or small for you, that works for your own circumstances. So can't recommend them enough. It's turning into a pitch for Less Tax for Landlords, isn't it? I better get Tony on for a podcast next. He is due to come on, I think, hopefully. Dr. Chung's saying, if you gain, what he's saying is you gain a brilliant portfolio up to 20 million in this company, surely taking 50 grand a year might not be ideal when you retire. He's right. You want to take out more than that. You want to live off the proceeds of your wealth that you've created. I don't know the answer to that, Dr. Chung. I'm pretty sure you can take more than that. As I say, you can split it across you and a partner. You might be able to pay your kids a certain amount, and certain valued expenses might be able to go through the business. But other than that, I don't know the answer. So direct that one to Less Tax for Landlords if you can in your own time. We are, Jim, unfortunately running out of questions, but if anyone's got any questions and they're still with us, we've not whittled down to like 2 or 3 people. If you're still there and you want to ask any questions, fire them in ASAP. We're going to start to wind this down, I think. I want to hear really a bit more, whilst we've got a few moments, if anyone's going to chuck in any questions here. I'll scan through seeing which ones I've missed. One I've missed here. Are lenders okay with unemployed tenants, Jim? Any example lenders would be super useful. That's Johnny Kirk Inns. Thanks for the question. It's a very good question. Presumably you can't buy properties with unemployed tenants in. They tend to become unemployed once they're in there, right? What's your sort of model with unemployed tenants?
No, you can take unemployed tenants. You get occasion if you lose the jobs, but you're absolutely right. If you've got a property and you're looking to get finance on it and you want the best available finance, do not take unemployed tenants. The lenders don't like them. No. But if they do become unemployed, just keep away from unemployed. That's a simple answer. It is a nightmare. It makes life as being a landlord 10 times more difficult. Yeah. So you may have to, but then do it when you have to. But it's a general rule. And this comes from HMO Daddy, who is considered to be housing a lot of unemployed tenants. They are the problems. 100% of my problems come from the unemployed. I hardly get any problems from the working tenants. So we simplify it. And I don't generally take that many unemployed, though I will do, but we have to be certain they're okay. And then you put them in properties that you're not looking to remortgage.
Okay, fair enough. I've got another question here from Vicky Cheng. She says, I understand the council will look at if there's enough parking space for the HMO planning application, like 3 car spaces required for a 5-bed HMO. Are there any guidelines on this? What's your advice there, Jim?
Vicky, don't get involved in planning. That's the quagmire that you lose properties. What you want to do is have properties where you don't need to have planning.
Why would you need I guess my question to Vicky, why would you need planning for a 5-bed HMO? You don't.
Because she's in an Article 4 area. The whole of the country is gradually becoming Article 4. Birmingham's Article 4 from yesterday. The whole of Article 4. Wolverhampton was 2 years ago. Whole parts of London are becoming Article 4. So you need planning permission. You probably don't want to broadcast what I'm going to say about this. So do you want me to say it or not?
Jim, you can say whatever you want. It's your reputation on the line.
My reputation is soiled beyond belief. If anyone thinks that, you just have to look at the websites where they are. Vicky, I started when the whole of the country was Article 4.
In other words, you had to have planning if you want to start an HMO. It's only, I think it's in 2010, we had the C3 to C4, where they said, yes, you didn't need planning. So what you'd do is you start an HMO, and you'd have a planning officer turning up saying, you can't do this, you need planning permission. And that's how I built up 100 properties without applying for planning. Are you getting my drift now?
Yeah, that's
just get on and do it. You don't ask your best mate if you can go to bed with his wife, do you?
No, I probably wouldn't go to bed with his wife in the first place, but yeah, different.
Okay, I'll leave
example.
that, Nick. So that's the situation. It's not a crime not to have planning, but the problem you're going to have now is you're going to find it great difficulty in getting finance and other things like that. And that's the problem.
Is a big problem, Jim, isn't it? I mean, it's all very well getting a 6-bed HMO and sticking 9 tenants in there and challenging the planning, which, you know, I'd love to test actually. So I'm going to definitely pick your brains further on that and get your book on that specific question, which you have educated me on today. Thank you.
You're very well.
But yeah, what's the lender going to say? The lender's not going to lend on 9, are they? So it needs to work with lending on 6. Perhaps you don't even tell the lender about the 9 until you've got it lent. That would be your decision if you wanted to do that route. Obviously, be careful you're not breaching any specific planning or finance mortgage rules. Clearly, we don't want to commit mortgage fraud. But assuming there's nothing in there not allowing you to rent to more tenants, I don't believe I've seen that in any lender's documentation. Have you, Jim, specifically citing the number of bedrooms on an HMO? No. So. That's to our discretion, I think. Obviously, be careful, check your lender, check with your broker. If anyone needs any good brokers, I've got an excellent broker we work with who can help you with all your HMO needs. We've got some great lenders out there. As I say, Johnny was asking for some lender examples. I'm not a fan of doing that on podcasts because this podcast is going to be online for years to come and it's very specific. And right now, coming out of the end of lockdown, it's very time sensitive and changing every single day. We're using Paragon for this buy-to-let purchase. We'll then refinance when we turn it to an HMO with someone else. Shawbrook are still lending, but they're a bit less loan to value. People are being a bit tricky in the market, so I wouldn't want to give any recommendations. They're the 2 we're using at the moment for 2 purchases. Doesn't mean I recommend them. They haven't gone through yet, so they might be a disaster. I'll let you know on the next podcast maybe. But if anyone wants a recommendation to a good broker, I can provide that. Get in contact with me on Property Forum or my email, me@nicholaswallwork.com. If you'd like to book any mentorships and stuff, go on to nicholaswallwork.com/mentorship. Reach out to me. I do a free call for anyone that wants it. We can have a chat through, see if I can help you and you are helpable. Maybe you're incompetent and won't take any action. I don't really want to work with you. I want to work with people that want to take action and work hard and smart and use the resources they've got and push their portfolio forward in a sensible manner. Jim, I want to ask you, and this is a question from me, about your co-living block. You've got a 220-room co-living building, haven't you? Can you tell me about that? What would you term? How do you run a co-living block, and what would you call co-living versus a large 10, 15, 20 bed sui generis HMO, for example?
Yeah, this is, I find the business is humiliating in some ways, in as much as the more you look at it, the more irrational it becomes. I did a JV with Barry, and Barry is the one who's taken the lead on this co-living project. So should we know Barry, or is Barry anonymous? Oh, Barry Glance is our partner on this. Okay. It's his push to do it's a co-living. He looked at it. I thought it was crap, to put it mildly. How can you charge 50% more rent because you've wrap it up with the idea of communality? In other words, you push the shared aspect of it all, and the security aspect. This place is like Fort Knox. You've got to have special pass cards to get in. We have a 24-hour concierge on the door. It's a 220-bed block, and it has its own bar facilities. And we find that by providing that level of extra, people will pay for it. It's almost like designer clothes. You can go to Asda and get a pair of trainers for £8, which are as good as a £140 pair of Nikes. Sorry, Nike might get upset about that, but I can't see the difference between the two. They are a pair of plimsolls as far as I'm concerned. And the same seems to apply to a certain extent with property. People will pay more for the fact that they've got exclusivity, security, and above all, communal facilities, which most of them don't use. Can you get your head around that?
No, I know.
It's weird.
Well, we find in even our HMOs, the bigger ones, that the communal areas aren't used, and if they are, they're just left in a state. You're better off with just giving people a good sized double ensuite bedroom and a nice kitchen, maybe a kitchen diner style, really.
Well, when people come and look at it, the first place we take them in, show them the communal bar area, lounge. We have cleaners who work there all day, so the place is kept immaculate, and it works. It just shows that there is markets you don't know that exist. All the people in there are what you call professionals, which you'd find strange that you'd get that number of professionals in the area. A lot of lenders turned us down, saying there's no demand. It's going to be filled by the end of this year. COVID set us back a bit. So I would like to say I could see it. It was my foresight to see something as great as that. But it was Barry's vision that showed there. I just provided the backup, found the deal, and provided the builders and the moral support, and didn't get in his way. That's the important thing.
Yeah, and
to do this.
Was the building an office to resi conversion? Did you say?
Correct. Yeah. It was the massive. It was. God, I can't remember what it's called now. They went bust. The company that provided services, and they recently went bust. Took that building over. Yeah, I mean, my view was to turn it in just to a small, a 50-bed HMO. That was it 50 beds? No, 40. Oh, I mean, I got my head around that. Yeah, 40-bed HMO was my view, and it worked on 40 beds.
Self-contained, fully self-contained studios, or an actual HMO with shared kitchens?
No, it's a ensuite with tea-making facilities and a shared kitchen. So to get around the planning, they are in pods of 6-bed flats.
Okay.
So
why wouldn't you go, out of interest, why wouldn't you go fully self-contained studios in that scenario? Is it because it's too expensive to develop them with all the kitchenettes?
No, because you've got space size and planning. So the approach to do this is to do them as 6-bed flats, shared. So you've got the C3 to C4 development and go through it that way.
Yeah, interesting, because we do a lot of office to resi conversions, and I mentor people on that specifically. That's a big part of our business. So we've gone on, I call them mega HMOs. So we've got a site in Newbury in Berkshire at the moment that was 10,500 square foot office over 3 floors, turned out into 42 studio apartments, but micro studio apartments. So they're ranging from 17 to 25 square meters. So they're under the council's planning requirement for a one bed studio, which is 37 square meters. So we can put as many of these in as we like, provided we're over the minimum space standards for a bedroom, ultimately. So, but they're all self-contained. There's obviously a higher cost to development there because we put full kitchenettes in each one. They're all fully self-contained, but there's no communal areas. So unlike a co-living block, we don't have to put in a gym or a coffee room or a breakout room or kitchens. You know, we're using every inch of space for lettable rooms. There's not a kitchen in sight other than all the little kitchenettes in the units. And I'd happily give a tour for anyone that wants any mentorship around that site if they want to see a good size office to residential conversion. But is it maybe borough dependent then, Jim? Because councils in the Thames Valley are quite happy for us to knock in these micro studios, provided in some cases we meet parking requirements. And parking requirements was brought up a minute ago by one of our listeners. In Newbury, we needed the full parking requirements, which is 0.75 parking spaces per unit. So with 42 units, we needed, 35 odd spaces, 30 odd spaces. But in Reading, they want no car parking. They're not worried about any car parking because they're trying to push for a parkingless town centre in Reading if you're in the town centre area. So again, parking different in different regions, which is why it's important to get a good planning consultant on board early before you buy the thing. So just reiterate, I just want to understand you correctly. You couldn't go to C3 units micro studios there, or you just chose not to?
We chose not to.
Okay.
I'm trying to work back on how we did it. Yes, we could have done it your way. and maybe that'd be a better way of doing it. I'll come up and see your how you've done it. Perhaps to do a trade. You come and see my 220 bed.
I'd love to. Yeah.
No, I think it's more the point that we like the idea, or Barry liked the idea. He'd taken the idea from Ransvan merchants, large property, various other people who did this, and provided a social aspect to it, and he liked that idea of doing it. But yes, we could have done, because it was commercial to resi, you can provide, as long as it's rooms, as long as they're above 6.51 square meters.
Yeah,
and we could have done it as micro flats. We just didn't.
Just went down that line. Either way, which is right, you never know.
Well, you know your market up there better than anyone.
No, I think. Don't give me any flattery for that one. That somehow I know what I'm doing, and that, I think it's got to be important, because other people listening here are going to think, oh, they know what they're doing. I can't do it. I don't know what I'm doing. I'll admit it. I've had to know what I've been doing since I was born. Never mind when I started getting into property. I just did it. I'm not clever. Don't think I'm somehow oracle. I just did it and kept on repeating what I did. You're the clever one. I don't. I can't work out markets and all the rest of it. I just did what I did, and I keep doing it. And sometimes I stray off my path, like I did with the co-living and rent to rents and a few other things. And thank God it's all worked.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good advice. I'm not clever per se. I wouldn't consider myself to be clever. I consider myself to be an entrepreneur, as you clearly are. And I think that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's getting stuck in and taking action. And, you can minimize the issues by, working with people like us and reading lots of books and educating yourself. But, you're only going to learn when you're actually doing it, and you're going to learn the hard way sometimes. And that there's no way around that. And I think it's critical when you're, getting into business, that you push forward and find, it's how you find solutions to problems that makes you successful. It's about, what do I do here if this problem comes up? It's not about falling flat on your face at the first problem and getting stressed out about it. It's about, because you're going to get problems. You're going to get, like you said, people suing you. You're going to get, thankfully I haven't had too many of those. I'm usually suing tenants that owe me money when they've left and left me with rent arrears. But, a lot of people, it's just about learning and overcoming those problems. And if you can do that successfully time and time again, that's when you build a portfolio over time. And it takes hard work, it takes determination, but it's not rocket science. So, if you want to build a portfolio, reach out to Jim and myself. We can help you. We'll try and help you accelerate it faster than we've done, right, Jim? I think that's where I just really want to help people, is just to fast track their route to success and building a good portfolio. Because if I learned some of the lessons I know now, early on in my career, I'd own twice the amount of property I would now, to be quite honest. And using other people's money, lease options, all that kind of stuff, if people know how to use those effectively, that's a really big thing, isn't it, to help people crack on and accelerate rapidly. We're having a few more questions coming in, so I hope you don't mind if we crack on and just answer those. We are... Rodney Watts has asked, do you think HMO bedrooms with cooking facilities, so he's talking really about bedsits now, or self-contained flats, for working, or working from home facilities, will become more favourable now than before the COVID outbreak? So cooking facilities in the rooms, is that going to be more on the agenda? Do you think people will want that more? Are you going to consider putting stuff in? I mean, you've got to be careful with planning there, haven't you? So I'm sure it would be more favourable if you could fit them in easily and cheaply, but maybe can't.
Well, that's the model I started about 20 years ago. I found a lot of people who applied for accommodation said, I don't want to share, even though it said a shared house. When they found they've got to share a bathroom and a kitchen, said no. So I started doing this, the self-contained model, putting cooking facilities in. There's two problems like that. As you say, it's planning. So you've got to be careful about that. Planners will generally allow you to get away with tea making facilities. En-suites are not a problem. It's how far you go. So you've got to provide a proper communal kitchen, and then each room will have a fridge and a microwave. The danger you've got to watch now is council tax, because if they get whiff that each room has its own en-suite and kitchenette,
they will council tax, and you get each room banded.
Yeah,
so you've got to be careful.
Claire Bartley actually asked a question earlier. She's asked exactly that question. Do they get charged council tax per room? So there's varying reports out there, isn't there, as what gets charged individual banding. What's your experience of that? What have you seen them charge banding for? Is it where you put the kitchen in? Have they charged on just on suite bedrooms, for example, that you're aware of?
It's always where you put a kitchenette in. It's the kitchenette is the killer.
Okay.
So the trick is get the property up and banded. So it's the commercial to resi where you get caught, because they'll come and then band the property. So if they find 6 rooms share kitchen and bathroom, they generally give you ban the whole property and then upgrade it afterwards. That would be, you've got to do it in 2 stages, 3 stages.
Yeah.
You don't do it all at once, and that's the general way of getting around it. And it's a great concern, and it's arbitrarily applied. That you're just lucky the council will come along and they just pick on particular landlords and council tax the rooms without any rationality to it. It seems bizarre situation. Whether it's going to become, as some people think, that all HMO rooms will get council taxed. The rules are so wide, they could council tax, as I say, a cardboard box. If it's been used as a dwelling, someone's living in that cardboard box, you could council tax it. That's how broad the legislation is. So the theory, even if it's just a room, share kitchen and bathroom, if each person's living in a different room, they could council tax it.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is different councils, isn't it, Jim? Different councils have different attitude. I see that through various planning apps and attitudes to parking, layout, space standards. HMO licensing is completely different. I got an enforcement notice. You know, when they brought in the extra banding for small HMOs back in October 2018.
Yeah.
I got slapped with an enforcement notice within 2 months because I hadn't put a banister in they wanted, and I hadn't upgraded the emergency lighting, because previously it was only 4 beds. It didn't need like an LD2 corporate fire alarm, emergency lighting, all this rubbish. Not rubbish, by the way, it's got a very good reason, but for a small HMO like that, it is rubbish. People can jump out the low windows in that house, or the protected fire escape down the stairs. So yeah, I got kind of banded with an enforcement notice almost immediately. I was outraged. And that was, I can name and shame them, that was not Reading Council, it was Wokingham Borough Council for a site on the edge of Reading. And they didn't have a clue, because they don't have any major HMOs in that area. So possible good minefield area there. So they've got, you're breaching the rules that have just come in. Well, give me a chance to fix them. You know, Reading Borough Council are really experienced, and they give you a notice to, do the works within 3, 6, 12 months, whatever's a reasonable time frame for that kind of work. I got slapped an enforcement notice. I couldn't believe it. I was on the phone ranting at the bloke, and it was clear he didn't know what he was doing. So yeah, we did the changes, got pictures to him within a couple of weeks, and no, we're really good landlords. But on that, he picked up on a couple of niggly things he wanted with that new legislation that we'd missed, unfortunately, and we brought it straight back up to spec. But I got an enforcement notice for it, which I had to have rapidly removed. So yeah, different councils, different attitudes, different knowledge base, and challenging certain things can be worthwhile, I think, but depending on the council. Right, we are getting close to wrapping up. I want to answer this one. This is a financial one, and someone asked early on in the session, which I haven't put it up, about the finances of an HMO deal. And this one, Jonathan Cummins actually wrote in, thank you for when you registered, Jonathan, popping it on the registration form. We do try and get to those questions. So if you are registering for a next chat show, put the comments in when you register. If you've got any questions there, we'll try and get to them. But this one, he asks, if I've got an Edwardian 3-bed house now, currently renting out to a single family at £1,800 a month, how much more could I make by converting it into an HMO premises? Well, we can't possibly answer that, Jonathan, because you haven't told us whereabouts it is, and you haven't done any research into what a good double room would rent for, and we don't know what your floor plans look like. It's a needle in a haystack, that one, isn't it, Jim? We wouldn't have a clue how to answer that.
Well, you can have a guess.
It's
a three-bed Edwardian. It's going to have 3 receptions. Just say it's going to be a 6-bed HMO.
6 bed,
600 quid a month per room. That means you get 3,600. You're not going to be much better off, because by the time you've taken off the cost of converting it, and the utilities, which will be about 400 quid a month. So 3632, cost of running it, 1800.
There's probably an extra grand in it, isn't there?
500. Well, it depends how much voids and bad debts you get. That's where this area Pacific. You don't get. I bet you get very few bad debts. What, 2%?
I mean, if he's letting that for £1,800, that sounds southeast. That's quite expensive for a 3-bed Edwardian house. And that could even be on the outskirts of London potentially. Could be Bristol. Could be Reading. Those kind of prices for those kind of size houses. So it's an expensive area. So you'd get a good rate for the rooms. 600 might even be low for those rooms. If it was London, you could be getting 758 to 850 for a good sized double ensuite room. Again, how many en-suites are there? How easy is it to convert? What's the cost of conversion? It might be 20 grand for knocking in a couple of en-suites and a fire alarm, or it could be 100 grand if you need to put 6 en-suites in and all the rest of it. So bit of a how long is a piece of string there, I'm afraid, Jonathan Cummins, but appreciate the question. But yeah, we can certainly work through with you if you want hand-holding on deal sourcing and picking that kind of stuff. That's a service Jim and I offer through our mentorships. Okay, Jim. Oh, hang on. Someone said, in London, rooms without a kitchenette. Oh, in London, rooms without a kitchenette are banned for council tax on each room. Kurt Fritzish is telling us. So but London sounds very strict there, Jim. I wasn't actually
there.
I don't have anything in London.
Well, as I said, a cardboard box can be banded. Yeah. It's down to the individual councils.
Yeah.
But all these things have a silver lining. Who pays? The tenant. And if they try to council tax my tenants, they've got no chance because they won't pay.
No. Fun and games. Right, Jim. That has been really, really good fun talking to you. I'd like to ask you just to quickly give us, and we know with these chat shows and all the education we do, whether it's through Property Summits, which is 5 leading industry experts, propertysummits.com, check that out if you haven't seen it already. Authentic, good quality property education. Jim and I are here to help. We do some great stuff there working with people. We've done our books. We've got loads of good educational content and we mentor people one-to-one. We can do tours of our HMOs. We can do all sorts of stuff for you. So get in touch. We'll be happily show you around, whether it's a one-off session or you want to work with us on a longer term basis, or if you want to work with us on kind of doing a deal and just getting a deal through. We're open to all those kind of ways of working together. Anything that's win-win, where you can do really well out of it and we do well out of it, and we have the satisfaction of having you do well out of it. I'm all in on that kind of stuff. So, Jim, just really over to you quickly, if I may, just to tell me, 1 minute pitch on, what you offer, the kind of people you'd like to see. If there's anyone listening today, how they can get in touch with you, and just give me a quick lowdown of the kind of education products and help you're giving people at the moment.
Great. Yeah, I think the easiest is you've got my website. It's easy to remember, HMO Daddy. The best and easiest way to get to know me is to come up and see me. And I take you around, show you some of my properties. We do a tour of the different types of HMOs that I do. You can ask any questions you want, spend a day with me, have lunch, and then if you want afterwards, we can have drinks afterwards and go for dinner if you fancy that as well. So that's probably the easiest. I do a whole load of courses on top of that, but you can see those on the website. I've got plenty of books, and so that's probably the best way. If you're interested in HMOs, come and see them. Most people find that day out amazing. It's not a course, it's look at it and ask questions, and it's great.
And it's a nice way of doing it, isn't it? Hands-on. It's a bit like the message you've been giving all along, just hands-on, get stuck in, come and see some, ask questions. You'll only know some of those questions once you're on site and you're seeing the spec and the layout and understanding what you're doing. But yeah, get stuck in and I guess learn that way. That's definitely an approach that I've taken throughout a lot of my career. From my side, I'm very much interested in mentoring people. I'm only taking on a small number of mentorships at the moment, probably around 10 people. I'm working with about 5 or 6 at the moment. So there's only a few kind of slots available, if you will, where I'd like to work with people. Jump on nicholaswallwork.com/mentorship. Don't forget to jump onto our website at propertyforum.com as well. That's all free education. Jump on there, ask questions that you've asked here again to the community there that can help. We do articles, news articles, loads of free ebooks. There's an HMO free ebook. We do a free educational email series on HMOs. You can jump on and subscribe to that on nicholaswallwork.com or somewhere on propertyforum.com under the education tab. Don't forget to go and buy the book. This has got a substantial amount of information on HMOs. I believe chapter 13 is HMOs. but look at the size of that book. It's a daddy. It's literally a daddy. It's got a chunk of HMO Daddy in there, essentially, Jim. Loads of HMO stuff, rent-to-rent, lease options, holiday lets, investing overseas, rent to buy, absolutely every strategy, serviced accommodation, short-term lets, JVs, financing. We haven't touched on anything to do with financing today, Jim, which is a real shame, but how to build JVs, how to work with private investors. We work with private investors, and how to treat your business as your real estate business portfolio as a business. And I've also got a whole chapter on mindset. So, if you're into, Jim and I touched upon this briefly, positivity, getting stuck in, all of these kind of strategies. I do a bit of mindfulness training. I do meditation. I do some of this kind of bit wacky stuff. But you know what? It really helps. And it's a tool in my toolkit that I can jump into whenever needed. I've said earlier on in the chat show, I believe success can be taught. And that's what Jim and I do. We teach it, we work with people, and we show what we've done. It's not rocket science, but 20 years experience counts for something, and believe it or not, will save you a shed load of money if you need help. Jim, as I said, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you again. We're going to go to our outro now, and thanks for coming on. Speak to you soon. I'll take you up on that coffee and dinner up your way, and do a meet on your co-living, and you're welcome down to Reading and Newbury, and I'll show you around as well. So thank you again.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.